The manager thought he was throwing out a broke black guest, but every hidden camera in that lobby belonged to the man she was humiliating. Rain tapped softly against the tall glass doors of the Sterling Crown Hotel in downtown Atlanta as Nathaniel Brooks stepped into the marble lobby with an old brown suitcase rolling behind him and a plain charcoal coat damp at the shoulders. He did not arrive with assistance. He did not wear a diamond watch. He did not announce a title, a company, or a last name that should have made people stand straighter. He simply walked to the front desk like any tired traveler who had just come in from a rainy evening, placed one hand gently on the counter, and gave the young clerk a reservation number. Maya Jenkins, the front desk clerk, typed it into the system and saw the confirmation appear instantly. Valid reservation. Prepaid suite. Internal audit code. Her eyes flicked once to the screen, then back to the calm black man in front of her. "One moment, sir," she said, polite but suddenly nervous. Before she could continue, Victoria Langford crossed the lobby in black heels that clicked across the marble like a warning. She was the hotel manager, sharp suit, perfect hair, silver name tag, and a smile that only appeared for guests she considered expensive enough to deserve it. She looked Nathaniel up and down, from the worn suitcase to the rain on his coat, then glanced at Maya's screen with irritation. "Is there a problem here?" Nathaniel answered before Maya could be trapped between truth and fear. "No problem. I have a reservation." Victoria did not touch the keyboard. She did not ask for patience. She did not verify the payment. She simply tilted her chin and said, "This property has standards, sir." The lobby quieted just enough for the words to travel. A couple near the fireplace looked over. A businessman in a navy suit paused with his phone halfway to his ear. Nathaniel kept his face composed. "Standards are good," he said. "That is why I am asking you to check the reservation." Victoria smiled without warmth. "Guests with legitimate reservations usually do not create confusion at my front desk." Maya's fingers froze above the keyboard because the reservation was right there, glowing on the screen like a witness. Nathaniel looked at Maya, then back at Victoria. "The reservation is legitimate." Victoria leaned closer, lowering her voice just enough to make it cruel but not enough to keep the cameras from hearing. "You may be more comfortable at another property." Nathaniel slowly lifted his eyes toward a small black dome camera above the chandelier, then to another hidden audit lens tucked near the gold trim behind the desk. His silence was not embarrassment. It was evidence. "Please make sure your report includes everything you are about to say," he said. Victoria blinked once, annoyed that he sounded calm instead of ashamed. "Excuse me. If you are refusing service, I would like the reason documented clearly." That calm request was the moment she decided to make the humiliation public. "Security," Victoria called, raising her voice across the lobby. Two uniformed guards near the glass doors turned toward the desk. "This gentleman is refusing to leave after being told we cannot accommodate him." Maya whispered, "Ms. Langford, the room is showing confirmed." Victoria's head snapped toward her. "Do not override me." Nathaniel placed both hands on the counter, not leaning, not pleading, just steady. "I have not refused to leave. I asked you to honor a valid reservation." Victoria turned back to him, eyes cold. "And I am telling you that not everyone who walks in with a confirmation number belongs in a Sterling Crown lobby." The sentence landed hard. A guest by the elevator stopped moving. One of the guards slowed, suddenly unsure. Nathaniel looked at Victoria for a long second, then at the cameras again, as if acknowledging old friends. "Ma'am," he said quietly, "you should be very careful with the word belongs." Victoria gave a short laugh. "I decide who belongs in this hotel." Nathaniel did not correct her. Not yet. He only stepped back from the counter, his old suitcase beside him, rainwater drying on his coat, while every hidden camera, every lobby microphone, every reservation log, and every corporate audit feed recorded the manager of his own hotel chain throwing him out of the lobby he owned. 2 hours before Victoria Langford decided he did not belong in his own lobby, Nathaniel Brooks stood in the quiet kitchen of his Atlanta penthouse, buttoning a plain white shirt while the city woke beneath a veil of rain. His home did not look like the home of a man who owned hotels in 23 cities. There were no gold statues, no glass wall filled with awards, no staff moving silently in the background. There was only a clean counter, a steaming cup of black coffee, a leather notebook, and an old brown suitcase resting near the door. The suitcase was older than the hotel chain itself. Its corners were scuffed, its handle had been repaired twice, and one brass latch was slightly darker than the other because his mother had replaced it herself after it broke in a motel laundry room in 1989. Nathaniel kept it because it reminded him of where luxury was supposed to begin, not with marble floors, but with whether a tired person could walk through a door and still feel human. He was 52 years old, tall, African-American, with warm dark brown skin, close-cut black hair touched with gray at the temples, and eyes that rarely missed a detail. He moved with quiet discipline, the kind earned not from military service, but from years of building something in rooms where people first assumed he was there to carry luggage, clean tables, or wait outside until someone more important arrived. His suit jackets were tailored, his name opened boardrooms, and his signature could move millions of dollars before lunch, but that morning he chose a charcoal coat with a plain collar, dark slacks, simple shoes, and a watch so modest most people would not look at it twice. On the counter beside his coffee lay a silver corporate lapel pin shaped like a small crown. He picked it up, rolled it between his fingers, then set it back down. Today, he did not want the pin to speak before people showed him who they were. His phone buzzed. A message from Lena Ortiz appeared on the screen. All internal audit channels active. Lobby cameras, desk audio, reservation logs, security feed, and service monitors are live. Legal standby. Nathaniel read it once, then typed back, no interference unless dignity is violated. Lena responded almost immediately, understood, sir. He placed the phone in his coat pocket and opened the leather notebook. On the first page, in his own handwriting, were 3 words, guest experience audit. Below that were notes gathered over 6 months, delayed check-ins for prepaid guests, selective enforcement of dress standards, security called for minor disputes, staff intimidation, unresolved guest complaints, and repeated mentions of Victoria Langford by name. The Sterling Crown Atlanta was the flagship property of Brooks Sterling Hospitality Group, the hotel that appeared in magazine spreads, hosted corporate galas, and impressed investors with chandelier light and polished stone. On paper, it performed beautifully. Revenue was high. Occupancy was strong. Reviews from premium guests were glowing. But the complaints told a colder story. A black couple celebrating an anniversary said they were asked for additional verification after payment had cleared. A delivery driver said he was told to use a side hallway even after being invited by a guest. A young front desk clerk anonymously wrote that certain customers were treated like problems before they spoke. Nathaniel had read every complaint himself, because he knew numbers could hide shame if nobody cared enough to look under them. He closed the notebook and looked toward the framed photograph on the shelf near the window. His mother, Evelyn Brooks, stood in the picture wearing a pale housekeeping uniform outside a roadside motel outside Savannah. She was younger than Nathaniel was now, her hands folded in front of her, her smile tired but proud. He remembered that uniform. He remembered the smell of bleach in her hair when she came home, the ache in her hands, the way she kept her shoes by the door because motel carpets carried every kind of dirt. He also remembered the night a manager accused her of taking a guest's missing bracelet before the bracelet was found under a sink hours later. No apology. No correction. Just an instruction to return to work. Nathaniel had been 16, standing in the service hallway, watching his mother straighten her shoulders and say, "A person can take your time, baby, but do not let them take your dignity." That sentence became the foundation of every hotel he later built. He did not build Brooks Sterling to become rich, though he did. He built it because he wanted a place where the person folding the sheets, the person carrying the bags, the person checking in late after a long flight, and the person paying for the most expensive suite were all treated like they had arrived with dignity already attached. That was the promise. Lately, the Sterling Crown Atlanta had begun breaking it. Nathaniel poured the rest of his coffee into the sink, rinsed the cup, and checked his reflection in the dark window. He looked like an ordinary traveler with a tired face and a simple suitcase. That was the point. If respect only appeared when his title appeared, then respect was not culture. It was performance. His driver was waiting downstairs, but Nathaniel had told him not to pull up to the main entrance. Instead, he took a black town car to a corner 2 blocks from the hotel, stepped out under an awning, and walked the remaining distance through the drizzle. He wanted to feel the approach the way a guest would feel it, the slick sidewalk, the heavy suitcase while catching in a crack, the glass entrance glowing warm against the gray morning, the doorman deciding in half a second whether to smile. As he walked, he noticed everything. The valet attendant who greeted a sports car before an elderly couple. The bell cart left too close to the ramp. The side door where housekeeping staff slipped in without anyone speaking to them. The security guard who scanned faces more than luggage. Nathaniel did not write any of it down yet. He carried the notes in his eyes. Good leaders observe before they announce. At the corner, he paused beneath a hotel awning across the street and looked up at the Sterling Crown. 32 floors of glass, stone, and branding that carried his name in legal documents, though not on the sign. Warm chandeliers glowed through the lobby windows. Guests moved inside like silhouettes in gold. Above the revolving door, a small camera faced the sidewalk. Another sat near the canopy. 2 more were hidden in the lobby design, part of the ownership audit system installed after early complaints about selective service. Victoria Langford believed cameras existed to protect property from guests. Nathaniel believed cameras, when used with accountability, could protect people from power. His phone buzzed again. Lena, reservation code embedded. Front desk will see standard guest confirmation, but corporate audit tag will appear if manager expands profile. Nathaniel typed, good. Then he added, watch Maya Jenkins. Prior note says she tried to report concerns. Protect her from retaliation if needed. Lena replied, already flagged. Nathaniel slipped the phone away and crossed the street when the light changed. A delivery cyclist passed behind him. A woman in a business suit hurried toward the entrance. A family with 2 children stepped from a rideshare under the canopy. Nathaniel held the door for them before entering. The father thanked him without looking closely. The children ran ahead toward the chandelier, laughing. Nathaniel smiled faintly, then stepped into the lobby. The air inside was warm and scented with citrus, polished wood, and expensive flowers. His suitcase wheels clicked softly over marble that reflected the chandelier like water. He saw the front desk immediately. He saw Maya Jenkins straighten when he approached. He saw Caleb Price, the assistant manager, looking down at a tablet with worry already printed on his face. He saw Victoria Langford near the far column, speaking to a wealthy guest with the bright, practiced smile of someone who understood status better than hospitality. Then he saw her smile fade the moment her eyes moved to him. That was the first answer the audit needed. Nathaniel did not react. He did not slow down. He did not adjust his coat or reach for the hidden power in his pocket. He simply rolled his old suitcase to the counter and waited his turn like any guest should be able to wait. Maya looked up with a polite smile. Good morning, sir. Welcome to the Sterling Crown. How may I help you? Nathaniel gave her the reservation number in a calm voice. She typed it in. The confirmation appeared. For one brief second, relief crossed Maya's face because the system was clear. Then Victoria began walking toward them. Nathaniel heard the heels before he turned. He had heard that sound in 100 hotels, authority approaching before courtesy had a chance to finish its sentence. Maya's hand hovered over the keyboard. Caleb looked up from his tablet. The small dome camera above the desk caught the angle of Nathaniel's face as he glanced at it, not nervously, but knowingly. Somewhere above the lobby, in a corporate audit room, Lena Ortiz watched the same feed and began saving the file. Nathaniel placed both hands lightly on the counter. He had not come to start trouble. He had come to see whether trouble had been waiting for people who looked like him all along. And as Victoria Langford stepped behind Maya with cold eyes and a manager's smile that carried no warmth, Nathaniel understood that the real audit had just begun. Victoria Langford had learned to smile at wealth and frown at uncertainty, and over 12 years in luxury hotels, she had become dangerously skilled at confusing the two. She stood near the marble column of the Sterling Crown lobby with one hand resting lightly against her tablet, watching the morning move through her property as if every guest, every bell cart, every employee, and every polished inch of floor existed under her personal approval. She was 41, white, elegant, sharp-featured, with blonde hair pinned into a flawless twist, a tailored black suit, and a silver name tag that read General Manager. On paper, she was exactly the kind of manager corporate liked to praise: revenue up, premium suite occupancy strong, VIP satisfaction high, event contracts renewed, lobby presentation spotless. But numbers can be a curtain when nobody checks what happens behind them. Victoria knew which guests made the lobby look expensive and which guests, in her words, lowered the atmosphere. She knew when to brighten her voice for a tech executive in a custom suit, when to offer champagne to a bride's family before they asked, and when to send Caleb Price to handle someone she did not want standing too long near the front desk. She did not call it discrimination. She called it brand protection. She did not call it humiliation. She called it maintaining standards. She did not call it fear when employees went quiet as she approached. She called it respect. Caleb Price, the assistant manager, had worked under her for 18 months and had learned to read her footsteps before he read her emails. If her heels moved quickly across the lobby, someone was about to be corrected. If she smiled without showing her teeth, an employee was about to be embarrassed in private. If she lowered her voice and said, "This is not the guest profile we encourage," someone was about to be treated as if their reservation mattered less than their appearance. Caleb hated it, but he had a mortgage, a sick father, and a fear of unemployment that Victoria understood how to use without ever naming it. Maya Jenkins, the young front desk clerk, hated it more openly, though only in the small safe ways employees learn to survive. She greeted every guest with the same warmth. She double-checked reservations before making assumptions. She wrote down incidents that felt wrong. Once, after Victoria told a black couple celebrating their anniversary that their prepaid suite required additional verification, Maya sent an anonymous note to corporate guest relations. The note came back weeks later marked received and resolved, but nothing changed. Victoria still ran the lobby. Caleb still looked away. Maya still needed the job. That was how Victoria won. Not by shouting all the time, but by making everyone believe resistance would cost them more than silence. The Sterling Crown Atlanta was her kingdom because she had convinced herself that profit proved character. Every month, the numbers came in strong, and every month, regional leadership praised her performance. She knew the premium guests by name. She remembered which wine a senator preferred, which room a film producer demanded, which private elevator a billionaire's assistant expected. She could bend policy for people who arrived with the right luggage and the right confidence. She could deny policy to people she decided did not fit the room. A white businessman with a declined card was offered a discreet second attempt and a private lounge seat. A black contractor with a prepaid reservation was asked to provide extra identification at the counter. A celebrity's nephew could bring friends through the lobby at midnight. A nurse arriving after a delayed flight was told the hotel was reviewing her booking because she looked, as Victoria once said, unsettled. The phrase sounded professional enough to survive email. That was Victoria's gift. She wrapped cruelty in language polished enough to pass through management meetings without cutting anyone who did not want to feel it. In her office behind the lobby, the evidence of her confidence sat in neat folders and unread messages. Guest complaints had been printed, reviewed, and softened. Staff concerns had been turned into coaching opportunities. Security reports had been rewritten so that removed guests sounded disruptive, confused, aggressive, or unable to verify payment. Victoria never wrote that someone looked poor. She wrote attire inconsistent with property standards. She never wrote that someone looked black and therefore suspicious. She wrote behavior caused concern among other guests. She never wrote that she felt challenged by a person who spoke calmly. She wrote guest became argumentative when asked routine questions. Those words had protected her for years because they sounded reasonable to people who never watched the footage carefully. But this week, an email had arrived from corporate with the subject line, "Unannounced Ownership Audit Window." Victoria had opened it between two vendor calls, skimmed the first paragraph, and dismissed it as another corporate exercise designed by people who did not understand the pressure of running a flagship property. She saw phrases like service consistency, dignity standards, guest equity review, and internal audit cameras. She rolled her eyes at the screen. "They want kindness measured now," she muttered. Caleb, standing near her office door, heard it but said nothing. "The property is performing," Victoria continued. "If they want to audit something, they can audit the numbers." Caleb asked carefully, "Do you want the team briefed?" Victoria closed the email. "I want the team focused on guests who matter." Caleb's face tightened. "All guests matter." She looked up slowly. "That is a sentence people say in training. On the floor, judgment matters." The word judgment carried the whole problem. Victoria did not think she was biased. She thought she had refined instincts. She thought she could identify trouble before it reached the elevators. She thought she could look at a coat, a suitcase, a voice, a posture, a skin tone, a hesitation, and decide whether the person belonged under the chandelier. The lobby cameras above her were part of the decor in her mind, black domes that protected the hotel from theft, lawsuits, and difficult customers. She did not know that Brooks Sterling's ownership group had installed hidden audit lenses after several complaints from this very property. She did not know that the front desk microphone could isolate service interactions when an audit tag was active. She did not know that reservation logs could be mirrored live to corporate security. She did not know that Lena Ortiz, the audit director, had already flagged her property for close observation. And she absolutely did not know that the man walking toward the front desk with the old brown suitcase was the one person whose signature sat above every operating agreement in the chain. When Nathaniel Brooks entered the lobby, Victoria was finishing a conversation with Mr. Whitcomb, a real estate developer whose company booked 3 corporate retreats a year. Her smile was bright, careful, expensive. "We have arranged the corner suite exactly as you requested," she said. "And the chef has adjusted the dinner menu for your guests." Mr. Whitcomb nodded, pleased, barely glancing at the staff who made such arrangements possible. Victoria enjoyed guests like him because their importance announced itself before she had to investigate. Then her eyes moved past his shoulder and found Nathaniel. Plain charcoal coat. Old suitcase. Rain on the shoulders. No assistant. No designer luggage. No visible jewelry. A black man walking alone toward the front desk with the calm confidence of someone who did not ask permission from the room. Victoria's smile thinned. She did not know him, and because she did not know him, she decided he required control. That was her first mistake. Maya saw Nathaniel at the counter and began the normal check-in process. Victoria watched from across the lobby, eyes narrowing as Maya typed the reservation number and paused. That pause bothered her. Not because the system was wrong, but because Maya's face showed recognition of something unusual. Victoria excused herself from Mr. Whitcomb and started across the marble. Caleb noticed and looked toward the desk. He saw Nathaniel's posture, the old suitcase, Maya's nervous fingers, and Victoria's expression. His stomach sank. He had seen this pattern before. The lobby would not erupt. Victoria was too polished for that. It would become worse in a quieter way. She would ask extra questions with a smile. She would make the guest repeat information already confirmed. She would imply that a mistake had been made by the guest, not by the system. If the guest stayed calm, she would call that evasive. If the guest became embarrassed, she would call that unstable. If the guest became angry, she would call security and say she had concerns. Caleb took one step forward, then stopped. Fear did that to him often. It let him see the fire and still stand beside the extinguisher without pulling the pin. Victoria reached the desk just as Maya was about to say the room was ready. "Is there a problem here?" she asked, though she had already decided there would be one. Maya swallowed. "The reservation is confirmed, Ms. Langford." Victoria looked at the screen. The name read Nathaniel Brooks, but not with the corporate title attached. The audit code sat lower in the profile, available if she expanded the internal field, but Victoria did not bother. She was not looking for confirmation. She was looking for leverage. "Payment method?" she asked. Maya clicked. "Prepaid and authorized." "Identification?" Nathaniel placed it on the counter. Victoria glanced at it but did not pick it up immediately. "Purpose of stay?" Nathaniel looked at her with polite surprise. "Business." "What kind of business?" Maya's eyes moved down. Caleb heard the question from several feet away and knew it was unnecessary. Nathaniel's voice stayed calm. "A reservation at a hotel does not usually require an interview." Victoria's face cooled. There it was, the moment she would later describe as attitude. Not because he had been disrespectful, but because he had named the imbalance gently enough that she could not pretend he misunderstood. She leaned closer to the screen, then to Maya. "Do not check him in yet." Maya whispered, "Everything is valid." Victoria's eyes did not leave Nathaniel. Validity is not the only standard. That sentence should have embarrassed her. Instead, it strengthened her because power often feels most real to people when they are using it unfairly and no one stops them. She saw a few guests looking over now, and rather than step back, she stepped into the performance. A lobby audience had always helped her before. Most guests did not intervene when a manager spoke with authority. Most staff did not risk their jobs. Most targets either left quietly or reacted loudly enough to justify the report. But Nathaniel did neither. He stood with his hands lightly on the counter, his old suitcase beside him, and his eyes steady. Victoria mistook that steadiness for defiance. She did not understand that he had spent his life watching rooms reveal themselves. She did not understand that every camera above her was no longer passive decor. She did not understand that her own lobby, the floor she called hers, was listening. And because she did not understand, she prepared to do what she had always done, turn bias into policy, humiliation into procedure, and a lawful guest into a problem she could remove. Nathaniel Brooks stood at the front desk of the Sterling Crown Atlanta with his old brown suitcase beside his right leg, rain still darkening the shoulders of his charcoal coat, and both hands resting lightly on the polished counter. The reservation was on Maya Jenkins's screen, confirmed, prepaid, and ready. The room existed. The payment had cleared. The identification matched. There was no policy problem, no technical issue, no reasonable cause for delay. But Victoria Langford stepped into the space between truth and service like she owned both. She did not look at Nathaniel the way a manager looks at a guest. She looked at him the way a gatekeeper looks at someone she has already decided must be turned away. "Business," she repeated, her voice smooth enough for the lobby but sharp enough for Maya to hear the warning underneath. "That is very broad, Mr. Brooks." Nathaniel did not react to the tone. "It is also accurate." Victoria's eyes narrowed slightly. She hated calm answers because they gave her no obvious mess to point at. She glanced toward his suitcase, then at his coat, then at the ID on the counter. "Do you have another form of identification?" Maya looked up quickly. Ms. Langford, the ID matches the reservation. Victoria did not turn toward her. I asked the guest. Nathaniel removed a second card from his wallet and placed it beside the first. Here is a passport card. Victoria picked it up with 2 fingers, examined it, and set it down as if it had disappointed her by being legitimate. And the card used for payment? The room is prepaid. That is not what I asked. The payment authorization should be in the system. Maya nodded before she could stop herself. It is. Fully authorized. Victoria's head turned slowly. Maya's face lost color. Maya, step back from the terminal. The instruction was soft, but it struck like a reprimand. Nathaniel noticed the way Maya's hands withdrew from the keyboard. He noticed Caleb Price standing near the concierge desk, tablet held against his chest, watching with a troubled expression and doing nothing. He noticed 2 security guards near the glass doors shift their weight as if waiting for Victoria's signal. He noticed the couple by the fireplace pretending not to stare, and the businessman near the elevator listening openly now. Most of all, he noticed the small black dome above the desk and the nearly invisible audit lens set into the gold trim behind Victoria's shoulder. Every angle was alive. Every word had a place to go. Victoria leaned toward the screen and clicked through the reservation herself. She saw the confirmation. She saw the room assignment. She saw the prepaid status. She saw the internal audit code at the bottom of the profile, but because she did not expect Power to arrive in a plain coat with a worn suitcase, she did not expand it. She closed the field instead. There appears to be a complication with this reservation. Nathaniel's voice remained even. What complication? It requires managerial review. For what reason? For guest verification. You have my identification and payment authorization. We reserve the right to verify any guest at any time. Of course, Nathaniel said. I am asking what specific issue triggered this review. Victoria smiled faintly. You seem very interested in challenging procedure. No. I am interested in receiving the room I reserved. At this property, tone matters. Nathaniel looked at her for a moment, and the lobby seemed to tighten around the silence. My tone has been calm. Calm can still be inappropriate. Maya's eyes lowered. Caleb shifted again but remained where he was. Nathaniel looked from Victoria to the reservation screen. May I speak with another manager? Victoria gave a small laugh, polished and cruel. I am the general manager. Then may I have the corporate guest relations number? You can find that on the website. I am asking you to provide it. And I am asking you to cooperate instead of escalating. Nathaniel folded his hands on the counter, not pleading, not pushing, only keeping the moment clean. Please document that I requested corporate contact information and that you declined to provide it. Victoria's face cooled. The word document had landed exactly where she did not want it. For years, she had controlled incidents by being the first person to write them down. The person who writes the report often gets to choose who sounded difficult, who looked suspicious, who caused discomfort, and who had to be removed. But Nathaniel was speaking like someone who understood that language could be evidence. It unsettled her. Mr. Brooks, she said, placing emphasis on his name as if it were already suspect, this lobby is not a place for games. I agree. Then let me be direct. Your reservation may have been entered improperly. Your payment may require review. Your presence is causing concern among staff. Maya flinched because that last sentence was a lie with her standing right there. Nathaniel's eyes moved briefly to Maya, not asking her to save him, simply acknowledging that she had heard it too. Which staff member expressed concern? Victoria's smile disappeared. That is internal. Then please do not use staff as a shield for a concern you have not explained. The businessman near the elevator lowered his phone. A bellman rolling a cart slowed near the column. One of the security guards looked at the other. Victoria felt the lobby listening, and instead of stepping back, she chose performance. "Sir, you arrived with questionable documentation, an unusual booking pattern, and no clear purpose of stay." Nathaniel looked at the confirmation screen, then back at her. "The documentation is valid. The booking is prepaid. My purpose is business. None of that is unusual for a hotel. For some hotels, perhaps. This one accepts prepaid reservations. This one also protects its atmosphere." There it was. Not policy. Atmosphere. The word floated over the marble, soft and poisonous. Nathaniel's expression did not change, but Maya's did. She had heard Victoria use that word before, usually moments before a guest who did not look rich enough, polished enough, or white enough was made to feel like a problem. Nathaniel placed his passport card back into his wallet. "Ms. Langford, I am asking again that you honor the reservation." Victoria straightened. "And I am telling you that I am not comfortable checking you in at this time. Comfort is not a booking policy. Safety is. Have I threatened anyone? You are becoming argumentative." Nathaniel's voice stayed level. "I am asking questions because you are refusing service without a valid reason." Victoria stepped slightly to the side so more of the lobby could see her face. It was the face she used when turning personal bias into managerial concern. "This is exactly the behavior I am referring to. You come into a luxury property, you refuse routine verification, you question management, and now you are trying to create a scene." Nathaniel looked around the lobby once, slowly. No one had moved away from him. No one looked afraid of him. The only tension in the room came from Victoria's voice and the way she kept sharpening the situation with every sentence. "I have not raised my voice," he said. "I have not refused identification. I have not refused verification. I have not created a scene. That is your interpretation." "No," he said quietly. "That is the record." Victoria's eyes flicked upward, almost involuntarily, toward the camera dome. It was the first time she seemed to remember it was there. Then she dismissed it, because she had spent years assuming cameras protected her version after the fact. Nathaniel noticed the glance. So did Lena Ortiz, watching from the corporate audit room 3 floors above through a secure monitoring feed. Lena had already saved the interaction from the moment Nathaniel approached the desk. On her screen, the reservation log showed green status. The payment authorization showed cleared. The audio file showed Victoria's voice rising, not Nathaniel's. Lena marked the clip, initial denial despite valid reservation. In the lobby, Victoria clicked open an incident report template on the terminal. Maya saw the header and whispered, "Ms. Langford, is that necessary?" Victoria did not look away from Nathaniel. "Yes." Nathaniel looked at the screen. "What are you reporting?" "A guest conduct issue." "What conduct?" "Refusal to comply with verification." "That is false." Victoria's fingers paused above the keyboard. "Careful. I have complied with every document request. You refuse to explain your business. A hotel guest is not required to disclose private business details to receive a prepaid room. At my discretion, they are." Nathaniel's gaze lifted from the screen to her face. "Your discretion does not override policy." Victoria's lips tightened. The calmness had become unbearable because it forced her to reveal that she was not enforcing policy, she was inventing it. She turned toward the guards near the entrance. "Security, please come to the desk." Maya inhaled sharply. Caleb finally took 2 steps forward. "Victoria, maybe we should review the profile again." She turned on him with a smile that made him stop. "Caleb, if I need assistance reading a reservation, I will ask." He froze. Another employee silenced. Another witness created. The guards approached, not aggressively, but visibly enough for other guests to turn fully now. One was an older man named Russell who had worked hotel security for 15 years and disliked being used as decoration for intimidation. The other was younger, nervous, waiting for instructions. Victoria pointed lightly toward Nathaniel's suitcase. This gentleman may need to be escorted out if he continues refusing cooperation. Nathaniel looked at Russell. I have a valid reservation. I have provided identification. The front desk confirmed payment authorization. Russell's expression shifted. He looked at Maya. Maya's eyes flicked toward the screen and then down. That was enough for Russell to understand the situation was not clean. Victoria saw the hesitation and sharpened her voice. Russell, do not look to my clerk for authorization. I am the manager on duty. Nathaniel turned back to her. Please include that instruction in your report as well. Victoria almost laughed. You think repeating that makes you sound powerful? No, then what is this? A request for accuracy. Accuracy. Her voice rose just enough to carry past the front desk. Accuracy is that you walked into this hotel with a questionable reservation, became confrontational when asked basic questions, and are now making my staff uncomfortable. Maya whispered, that is not what happened. The lobby went still. Victoria's eyes snapped to her. Excuse me. Maya swallowed, but something in her had finally moved. The reservation is valid. He gave identification. He has not been confrontational. Victoria stared at her as if betrayal had stepped out from behind the desk in a blazer. Go to the back office. Ms. Langford, now. Nathaniel spoke before Maya could be forced to choose alone. She is telling the truth. Victoria turned toward him, cold and furious beneath the polished surface. You do not direct my staff. I am not directing her. You are interfering with hotel operations. I am standing at the desk where I was told to check in. You are no longer being checked in. The sentence landed with a finality she had not earned. Nathaniel's eyes held hers. Are you refusing to honor my reservation? Yes. For what reason? Manager discretion. Please be specific. Victoria stepped closer, lowering her voice into something sharper than shouting. Because guests like you make our real guests uncomfortable. The words passed through the lobby and left a silence behind them that no chandelier could warm. Maya closed her eyes. Caleb looked at the floor. Russell's jaw tightened. Nathaniel did not move. He did not look wounded in the way Victoria expected. He looked disappointed, as if she had confirmed something ugly he had hoped not to find. Slowly, he turned his eyes toward the camera above the desk, then back to Victoria. Please repeat that in the report. Victoria realized then that she had gone further than she intended, but pride would not let her retreat. Security, she said, louder now, escort him from the lobby. Russell did not move immediately. The younger guard looked at him. Guests near the fireplace were openly watching. Daniel Reed, a consultant sitting in the lounge with a laptop, had begun recording from behind a coffee cup. In the corporate audit room, Lena Ortiz saved a second clip and sent a message to legal, manager has refused valid reservation. Discriminatory statement captured. Security being called. Nathaniel remained still, his old suitcase beside him, the valid reservation on the screen, and the entire lobby suspended between what Victoria claimed and what everyone had just seen. He had not revealed himself. He had not raised his voice. He had not used power to stop her. Not yet. He only said, Ms. Langford, you still have time to correct this. Victoria gave him a smile that carried years of getting away with things. I decide who belongs in this hotel. Nathaniel looked once more at the camera dome, then at Maya, then at the guards. Then make sure the cameras heard you. Victoria did not understand why the sentence made the air feel colder. She only understood that a man she had tried to shrink was still standing straight in front of her, and because she could not make him bow, she decided to make the humiliation bigger. Victoria Langford did not call security because Nathaniel Brooks was dangerous. She called security because he was calm, and his calm was beginning to make her look exactly like what she was. The lobby of the Sterling Crown Atlanta had changed temperature without the air conditioning moving at all. Guests who had been pretending not to listen were no longer pretending. Maya Jenkins stood behind the front desk with her hands pressed together, eyes moving between the valid reservation on her screen and the manager who had just ordered a lawful guest removed. Caleb Price stood several feet away with his tablet held against his chest, his mouth slightly open, still trapped between fear of Victoria and shame at himself. Russell, the older security guard, remained near the counter instead of stepping toward Nathaniel, because after 15 years in hotels, he knew the difference between a disruptive guest and a manager trying to use his uniform to make a guest feel small. Victoria saw the hesitation and her face hardened. "Russell," she said, each syllable clipped and cold, "escort him out." Russell looked at Nathaniel, then at Maya's screen. "Ma'am, is the reservation invalid?" Victoria's eyes flashed. "That is not your concern." Nathaniel spoke before Russell could be punished for asking the obvious. "The reservation is valid. The payment is authorized. The identification has been provided." Victoria turned toward him with a smile that did not reach her eyes. "You keep repeating that as if repetition changes the atmosphere you have created." "I have not created an atmosphere," Nathaniel said. "I have asked for the service attached to my reservation." "No," Victoria said, raising her voice just enough for the surrounding guests to hear. "You have questioned my staff, challenged my authority, and attempted to pressure this hotel into making an exception." Maya whispered, "There is no exception needed." Victoria slowly turned her head. "Maya, back office. Now." Maya did not move. That one small stillness became its own act of courage. Her voice shook, but she kept it audible. "Ms. Langford, the system says his room is ready." The words crossed the lobby like a match struck in a dark room. The businessman by the elevator looked at the front desk screen, though he could not read it from where he stood. A woman seated near the fireplace set down her tea. Daniel Reed in the lounge adjusted his phone so the camera captured Victoria, Nathaniel, Maya, and the security guards in one frame. Victoria noticed the phone and pointed toward him. "Sir, recording is not permitted in guest service areas." Daniel lowered the phone slightly but did not put it away. "I am a guest in the lounge. This is a private property." "Then your cameras are recording too," he said. "I am just making sure someone neutral has a copy." Victoria's face tightened. She looked up toward the black dome above the desk, then toward the chandelier, then back at Nathaniel. For half a second, something like doubt passed behind her eyes, but she smothered it quickly. She had survived complaints before. She had rewritten reports before. She had convinced corporate that difficult guests exaggerated. Cameras, in her experience, showed movement but not motive. Reports supplied motive. And she controlled reports. "Caleb," she said without looking away from Nathaniel, "open an incident file." Caleb swallowed. "For what category?" "Guest disturbance." Nathaniel looked at Caleb. "Please document that I did not raise my voice, did not refuse identification, and did not refuse payment verification." Victoria laughed softly. "You do not get to dictate the incident file." Nathaniel turned back to her. "No. But I can ask that it be truthful." "Truthful," she repeated, as if the word belonged to her. "Truthful is that you came into a luxury hotel, made my clerk uncomfortable, attempted to bypass verification, and are now refusing to leave after management denied service." Maya's face flushed. "He did not make me uncomfortable." "Maya," Victoria snapped. "Back office." "He did not." The second time came stronger. The lobby heard it. Russell heard it. Daniel's phone captured it. Above them, hidden audit microphones captured it cleanly from the front desk trim. In the corporate audit room, 3 floors above the lobby, Lena Ortiz sat forward. in her chair and pressed save on the live clip. Her screen showed 4 angles: the front desk wide shot, the counter-level audio camera, the lobby entrance feed, and the reservation log mirrored from Maya's terminal. The log was clear: confirmed, prepaid, authorized, room assigned, audit code active. Lena typed a note into the secure file: manager falsely states guest disturbance after valid reservation. Clerk contradicts. Security ordered. She sent a message to corporate legal: escalation continuing. Guest dignity violation threshold met. Legal replied: preserve all channels. Do not intervene until false report or physical removal attempt unless safety concern. Lena looked at Nathaniel on the screen. He stood still, old suitcase beside him, face composed. She knew his instruction: no interference unless dignity is violated. The problem was that dignity had already been violated. Now they needed the full record of how far Victoria would go when she believed no one powerful was watching. In the lobby, Victoria stepped behind the desk and began typing into the incident report herself. Guest arrived without appropriate verification, she said aloud as she typed, turning her falsehood into official language one line at a time. Nathaniel watched her fingers. That statement is inaccurate. Guest became argumentative when asked routine questions, she continued. That is inaccurate. Guest refused to cooperate with management. That is inaccurate. Victoria looked up, irritation sharpening her face. Do you intend to interrupt every sentence? Only the false ones. A few guests drew in quiet breaths. The answer was not loud, but it exposed the absurdity of her report so clearly that even Caleb looked down to hide a reaction. Victoria pushed the keyboard back and folded her arms. Mr. Brooks, I am going to explain this once. This property is not required to accommodate every person who walks in with a number on their phone. I do not have only a number. I have a valid reservation. A reservation can be cancelled. Has mine been cancelled? Victoria looked at the screen. It had not. It is under managerial review. That is not cancellation. It will be if you continue. Continue what? This behavior. Nathaniel's eyes held hers. Standing here. Challenging me. Asking for policy is not a challenge. It is when the guest does not understand where he is. There it was again, dressed slightly differently. Where he is. The lobby went quiet enough for the rain outside to become audible against the glass. Nathaniel looked past her toward the massive chandelier, the marble floors, the carefully arranged white orchids, the polished brass railings, and the staff frozen under the weight of one woman's prejudice dressed as management. I understand where I am, he said. Victoria leaned forward. Then understand this. The Sterling Crown is a premium environment. We cannot have every walk-in with a questionable profile disturbing our guests. I am not a walk-in. You arrived like one. Arrival style is not policy. It is judgment. Whose judgment? Mine. Nathaniel nodded once, slowly, as if she had finally answered the real question. Please include that too. Victoria's lips pressed into a thin line. Security, remove his luggage from the lobby. Russell stiffened. Ma'am, I am not touching a guest's property unless there is a safety issue. The younger guard beside him looked relieved that Russell had spoken first. Victoria stared at him. You work for this hotel? Yes, ma'am. That is why I am asking for a clear reason. The reason is that I gave an instruction. Nathaniel turned his head slightly toward Russell. Thank you for asking. Victoria's anger flicked toward Nathaniel. Do not thank my staff like you are in charge of them. I thanked a man for using judgment. You are not qualified to judge my staff. You do not know what I am qualified to judge. The sentence was quiet, but for the first time, it carried a shadow of the truth beneath the surface. Victoria felt it, but she did not understand it. She heard only insolence. She grabbed the printed registration sheet from the side printer and held it up. You want documentation? Fine. I am denying check-in due to failure to meet verification standards and behavior inconsistent with guest conduct policy. Maya spoke again, softer but clear. There is no failed verification. Victoria turned on her. You are one more word away from suspension. Maya's eyes widened. Caleb finally stepped forward. Victoria, threatening staff in the lobby is not helpful. She looked at him as if he had become furniture that dared speak. Caleb, you can join her in the back office if you want to review your future here. That threat landed harder than her insults to Nathaniel because it revealed the machinery behind her power. Guests saw it. Staff saw it. Cameras saw it. This was not one rude moment. This was a management style built on fear. Nathaniel looked at Maya and Caleb, and his expression changed just enough for Lena upstairs to notice. Not anger. Resolve. Victoria had moved from humiliating a guest to threatening employees for telling the truth. The audit had crossed into something larger. Nathaniel spoke carefully. Ms. Langford, do not retaliate against staff for correcting a false statement. She laughed once. Retaliate? You really do enjoy dramatic words. Accuracy is not dramatic. No, this is dramatic. You walking in here with a suspicious booking, refusing to accept management discretion, rallying employees against me, and creating a scene because you were told no. Nathaniel's voice stayed level. Your clerk confirmed the booking. Your system confirmed payment. Your staff has not been rallied. Your report is false. Your reason for denial has shifted 4 times. Daniel Reed's phone captured Victoria blinking at that last sentence. It was true. Payment. Verification. Atmosphere. Comfort. Staff concern. Guest conduct. Each reason had appeared when the previous one failed. Victoria recovered with the tactic that had saved her before. She made the accusation bigger. I am beginning to suspect this reservation may be connected to fraudulent activity. Maya gasped softly. Ms. Langford. Nathaniel's eyes did not move from Victoria. On what basis? Pattern. What pattern? Guests attempting to exploit prepaid reservations. You have not identified any irregularity in the reservation. That is internal. No, Nathaniel said. That is invented. Victoria's face flushed. I will not be spoken to that way in my lobby. I have spoken to you with more respect than you have given me. The word sat between them. No insult. No threat. Just truth. Victoria could not tolerate it. She pointed toward the glass doors where rain shimmered beyond the revolving entrance. You need to leave this property now. Are you formally refusing service? Yes. Despite a valid reservation? Despite your attitude? Please write that as the reason. I will write what is appropriate. You mean what protects you? The lobby seemed to lean toward the counter. Victoria's polished mask cracked. Guests like you always think you can intimidate people by recording, complaining, asking for corporate numbers, making everything about discrimination when the truth is you simply do not meet the standard. Maya covered her mouth. Caleb's face tightened. Russell looked at the floor, jaw clenched. Nathaniel's hand rested on the suitcase handle. His face remained steady, but his eyes deepened with something older than this lobby. Guests like me. Victoria's pause was too long. Then she doubled down. Difficult guests. No, Nathaniel said softly. You chose the first phrase. Keep it. She realized then that she had given him another line for the record, but pride forced her forward. Security, if he does not leave voluntarily, escort him to the sidewalk. Russell said, I need you to confirm there is no active reservation before I do anything. You are not here to audit my decision. No, ma'am. I am here to keep people safe. He is not unsafe. The younger guard nodded slightly before he could stop himself. Victoria saw it and understood she was losing not authority exactly, but obedience. That was worse. She turned to the lobby instead, performing for the wealthy guests she thought would naturally side with her. Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize for the disruption. We are handling a guest verification issue. Nathaniel turned slightly, speaking to no one in particular, yet loud enough for the room. There is no guest verification issue. There is a manager refusing a valid prepaid reservation. Victoria snapped, "Stop addressing my guests. They are witnesses now." That sentence did what raised voices could not. It named the room. Witnesses. Not audience. Not real guests. Witnesses. Daniel's phone stayed up. The woman by the fireplace opened her own camera. Mr. Whitcomb, the real estate developer Victoria had been flattering minutes earlier, stepped away from the column and said, "Victoria, if the reservation is valid, why not check him in and resolve this privately?" Victoria stared at him, stunned that premium status had spoken against her. "Mr. Whitcomb, you do not have the full context." "I have heard enough context to be uncomfortable." Nathaniel looked at him but did not thank him. This moment was not about rescuing one guest because another rich guest approved. It was about the policy being applied correctly before approval arrived from someone Victoria respected. Victoria's face hardened further. She turned back to the incident report and typed quickly. "Guest refused to leave after multiple requests," she said aloud. Nathaniel answered, "Because the refusal of service is unsupported. Guest attempted to incite other guests." False. Guest caused staff distress. Maya's voice broke through again. "You are causing staff distress." Victoria froze. Maya looked terrified of her own courage, but she did not take it back. Caleb finally moved beside Maya, not in front of her, but next to her. "The reservation is valid, Victoria. We all see it." For the first time, Victoria looked surrounded by truth instead of staff. Her response was to punish the truth. "Both of you are suspended pending review." Nathaniel's eyes sharpened. "For confirming a valid reservation? For insubordination? Please include that in the report as well." "I am done with your report requests." "The cameras are not." Victoria looked up at the dome again, longer this time. Then she smiled, a cold little smile built from years of believing she could explain anything later. "The cameras will show a manager maintaining order." Nathaniel looked at her with something close to pity. "No. They will show a manager creating disorder and calling it order." Upstairs, Lena Ortiz saved another clip and sent a new message to legal and regional leadership: "Manager has threatened staff. Escalated false report, security removal attempt, discriminatory language captured. Ownership intervention recommended." Legal replied, "Thomas Grant en route to lobby. Hold live feed." Nathaniel's phone buzzed once in his coat pocket. He did not check it. He did not need to. He could feel the moment turning. Victoria could not. She picked up the phone at the desk and called the internal security line herself, even though 2 guards were already there. "This is Langford at front desk. I need additional security to remove a non-compliant guest from the lobby. Possible fraudulent reservation. Guest is refusing to leave and influencing staff." The call was recorded by hotel systems and mirrored to corporate audit because the reservation profile was tagged. Lena marked it, "False security escalation." Nathaniel watched Victoria hang up. "You just reported fraud without evidence." "I reported concern." "You said possible fraudulent reservation." "That is concern." "That is an accusation." "Then perhaps you should have thought about that before creating one." Nathaniel's expression remained calm, but every guest watching could sense the cruelty of the sentence. It was not about hotel policy anymore. It was about making him carry the shame of her suspicion. She pointed to the doors again. Outside. Now. Rain streaked the glass behind her. The old suitcase stood beside Nathaniel like a witness from another life, from motel hallways and his mother's tired hands, and every lesson about dignity he had built into the company Victoria was betraying. He looked at the suitcase, then at Maya, then at Russell, then at the cameras. "I will step away from the desk so your staff is not placed in further conflict," he said. "But I am not leaving the property until the reason for refusal is documented truthfully." Victoria laughed. "You do not get to set conditions. Neither do you get to invent them." Additional security appeared near the lobby entrance, 2 more guards responding to Victoria's call, unsure what scene they had entered. Guests shifted back. Phones rose quietly. Caleb moved closer to Maya. Russell lifted one hand toward the arriving guards. "Hold. No safety issue." Victoria turned on him. "You are relieved from this response." Russell did not move. "You can write that up later." The lobby had fully changed now. It was no longer Victoria against one guest. It was Victoria against the record, the staff, the cameras, the witnesses, and the truth she kept trying to rename. Nathaniel stepped back from the counter, taking the handle of his old suitcase. He stood in the center of the marble floor, beneath the chandelier, with Rain behind the glass doors and hidden cameras above him. Victoria mistook the step back for surrender. "Finally," she said. "Now leave before this becomes worse for you." Nathaniel looked at her and spoke with the same controlled voice he had used from the beginning. "Ms. Langford, this already became worse. Just not for me." She frowned, not understanding. The private elevator behind the lobby chimed softly in the distance, but Victoria was too focused on winning the room to hear it. Upstairs, corporate legal had begun descending. Lena Ortiz had the full footage saved. Thomas Grant, regional vice president, had been notified. Maya's screen still showed the valid reservation. Daniel Reed's video was still recording. Russell and Caleb had both contradicted the manager. And Nathaniel Brooks, the man Victoria believed she could shame into the rain, remained exactly what he had been when he walked in, calm, lawful, observant, and far more powerful than the lobby had been trained to recognize. Nathaniel Brooks did not stay calm because Victoria Langford had failed to offend him. He stayed calm because long before he owned hotels, long before executives waited for his approval and lawyers used his signature to close deals, a woman in a faded housekeeping uniform had taught him that anger could be honest and still be expensive if you let the wrong person write the ending. The lobby around him was loud in all the ways expensive rooms pretend to be quiet. Rain brushed against the glass doors. Guests whispered beside leather chairs. Security guards shifted near the entrance, unsure whether they were being asked to protect safety or protect a manager's pride. Maya Jenkins stood behind the front desk with her face tight and worried, suspended by a woman who had no right to punish truth. Caleb Price stood beside her now, pale with fear but no longer fully silent. Victoria held the desk phone like a weapon she had already used, certain the words possible fraudulent reservation would make everyone see Nathaniel as a problem instead of a guest. But Nathaniel saw something else. He saw patterns. He saw how quickly policy became fog when bias needed somewhere to hide. He saw how a false report could turn calm questions into aggression, staff honesty into insubordination, and a valid reservation into suspicion. He had seen it years ago, not in a marble lobby like this one, but in a service hallway behind a 2-story motel outside Savannah, where the carpet smelled of old rain and the laundry room never fully cooled. His mother, Evelyn Brooks, had worked there for 8 years. She cleaned rooms, folded towels, checked supply closets, and knew every sound the old building made after midnight. She could tell from the scrape of a housekeeping cart which will needed oil. She could smell cigarette smoke in a non-smoking room before the door opened. She could find a missing earring under a bed frame with a flashlight and patience. But one Friday night, a guest claimed a bracelet was missing, and the manager did not search the room first. He called Evelyn into the office, closed the door halfway, and accused her in a voice low enough to sound professional. Nathaniel had been 16, waiting in the hallway with his school backpack against his shoulder, hearing every word. His mother did not yell. She did not cry in front of that man. She asked him to check the sink trap, the nightstand drawer, and the laundry chute before he wrote her name into anything official. The manager dismissed her. 2 hours later, the bracelet was found under a bathroom vanity where the guest had dropped it. The manager never apologized. He only said, "Get back to work." Nathaniel remembered his mother walking out of that office, shoulders straight, eyes tired, dignity still intact but wounded in a place no paycheck could reach. On the bus ride home, he asked how she kept from screaming. Evelyn looked at him through the window reflection and said, "Baby, I was angry. But if I let anger drive, he would have called me exactly what he needed me to be." That lesson had entered Nathaniel deeper than any business class. Years later, when banks doubted him, investors interrupted him, and hotel owners assumed he was an assistant instead of the buyer, he learned to keep the record clean. He learned to let arrogant people finish their sentences. He learned that small power often destroys itself when it believes the person in front of it has none. Now, beneath the chandelier of his own flagship hotel, that old lesson held him upright. Victoria saw a man refusing to break. She thought it was attitude. She did not understand it was discipline. His phone buzzed once in his coat pocket, then again. He did not reach for it, but he knew the rhythm. Lena Ortiz would be upstairs or in the secure audit room, building the timeline with the careful precision that made her one of the strongest people in his company. Lena had been hired after Brooks Sterling acquired 3 luxury properties where guest complaints had been erased by local managers. She had created the dignity audit system, camera preservation, reservation mirroring, staff retaliation flags, audio review, and legal escalation when a manager's story began separating from the record. Nathaniel had approved every part of it, not because he liked surveillance, but because people with power often behaved best when they knew truth had a backup. The cameras were not there to embarrass ordinary guests. They were there for moments like this, when a manager believed a person's dignity could be edited out of the report. Nathaniel had not come to reveal himself at the first insult. That would have protected him, but it would not have exposed the culture. If he had walked in wearing a corporate pin, Victoria would have smiled. If he had arrived with a driver and 2 assistants, she would have offered sparkling water. If Lena had warned the property that ownership was on site, the lobby would have performed kindness for one morning and returned to cruelty by dinner. Nathaniel needed to know what happened before power was visible. He needed to know how the system treated a man with an old suitcase, rain on his coat, and a name that meant nothing to a manager who judged belonging by appearance. That was why he did not say who he was when Victoria questioned his purpose of stay. That was why he did not correct her when she said "my lobby." That was why he did not reach into his wallet for the black Brooks Sterling founder card tucked behind his identification. A reveal too early would have saved his evening. A record complete enough could save the next guest. Victoria mistook his restraint for weakness and kept walking deeper into the trap she was building with her own words. "You are making this difficult for yourself," she said, standing several feet from him now as additional security waited near the entrance. "This entire situation could have been avoided if you had cooperated." Nathaniel looked at her, calm as still water. "I cooperated with every lawful request you made. You questioned management. That is not misconduct. It is when management is trying to protect the property." Protect it from what? She did not answer immediately because the honest answer would have exposed her. She could not say from a black man with a suitcase that does not impress me. She could not say from a guest whose calm makes me feel less powerful. So she reached for language polished by years of getting away with harm. "From uncertainty." Nathaniel nodded once. "Then we agree on something. Uncertainty should be clarified by facts." Victoria's mouth tightened. "You do not get to lecture me on facts." He glanced toward the screen behind the counter, where the confirmation still sat like a quiet witness. Facts are already here. Maya looked at the screen. Caleb looked at the screen. Russell looked at the screen. Victoria did not. That was another thing Nathaniel had learned about false authority. It avoided the one object in the room that could end the argument. A clean record. A clear policy. A confirmed reservation. A truthful witness. Instead, it kept moving, changing reasons, adding suspicion, hoping motion would look like justification. Upstairs, Lena's team was preserving every motion. The front desk. Audio had captured Victoria's first refusal. The lobby-wide shot had captured Nathaniel's hands visible and empty, his voice level, his posture non-threatening. The reservation mirror had captured Maya's confirmation. The desk camera had captured Victoria opening the incident report after being contradicted. Daniel Reed's phone had captured the moment Victoria said guests like you. Caleb's staff tablet, still logged into the internal messaging platform, had captured a message from an employee near the cafe, "Is she doing it again?" Lena did not need to guess what that meant. She saved it anyway. In the lobby, Nathaniel's eyes moved briefly to the orchids arranged on the center table. They were white, perfect, and replaced every 3 days by a vendor whose invoice he had approved during a cost review. He remembered how proud the design team had been of this lobby. Italian marble. Custom lighting. Brass trim. A scent profile designed exclusively for the sterling crown. But his mother's voice came back to him with uncomfortable clarity, "Pretty floors do not make a place clean, baby. People do." He had built properties to honor that truth, and somehow, in this lobby, under this manager, the marble had become camouflage. Victoria stepped closer again, keeping enough distance to avoid seeming openly hostile while using every inch of her posture to dominate. "Mr. Brooks, this is your final opportunity to leave voluntarily before I document refusal to comply. You have already written several things that are not true. I write the report. That is what concerns me. You think corporate will take your side because you speak calmly?" The irony nearly moved through the room, but only Nathaniel fully understood it. He looked at her for a long second, seeing not just a manager but the entire structure that had allowed her to confuse revenue with immunity. "Corporate should take the side of the record. Corporate takes the side of performance," she said, and there it was, the belief beneath everything. Performance. Revenue. Image. The worship of numbers over people. Nathaniel's expression softened, not with forgiveness, but with recognition. He had suspected the problem ran deeper than one bad evening. Now Victoria was giving him the philosophy behind the behavior. Maya heard it too. Caleb heard it and looked ashamed, because he had used similar words in meetings to survive. Russell heard it and looked toward the guests, perhaps wondering how many people had been removed under that same invisible rule. Nathaniel spoke quietly. "Performance without dignity is failure." Victoria gave a short, dismissive breath. "That sounds like something from a training poster. It should have been in yours." Her eyes flashed. "I am done debating. We were never debating. You were refusing service, and I was asking you to be honest about why." The private elevator beyond the lobby gave a soft chime, almost swallowed by the rain and murmurs, but Nathaniel heard it. He did not turn. He knew that elevator. It required executive access above the public floors. If Lena had moved Thomas Grant and legal through that route, they were close. But the reveal was not ready in his mind, not because he needed more humiliation, but because Victoria had just threatened staff, falsified a report, and called in additional security. The record now had to show whether she would correct herself when given one last chance. Nathaniel looked at Maya. "Ms. Jenkins, please do not risk your job further on my account." Maya's eyes glistened but did not fall. "Sir, the truth is the truth." Something in Nathaniel's chest tightened at that. "Not pain exactly. Memory. His mother again, standing in a motel hallway with tired feet and a clean conscience. He turned back to Victoria. Your clerk understands hospitality better than you do. Victoria's face hardened into a mask. That is enough. No, Nathaniel said, still calm. It has been enough for a while. The sentence was not loud, but it changed the room because it carried the first unmistakable hint that Nathaniel was not simply enduring the situation. He was measuring it. Victoria heard the shift and misread it as a threat she could use. Did everyone hear that? She said, turning slightly toward the guards. That is the tone I am documenting. Russell looked at her. He did not threaten anyone. I decide what constitutes escalation. Nathaniel's eyes moved to the camera above the desk again. Not alone. Victoria frowned. What does that mean? He did not answer. He did not need to. From the direction of the private elevator, footsteps approached across the marble, steady and official. Caleb turned first. Maya followed his gaze. Russell straightened. Victoria, still facing Nathaniel, noticed their expressions change before she noticed the people entering the lobby. For the first time that morning, uncertainty moved onto her face. Nathaniel remained where he was, one hand resting on the handle of his old suitcase, the other relaxed at his side. He had not raised his voice. He had not shown his title. He had not used his power to frighten anyone. He had let the truth gather around him, camera by camera, witness by witness, word by word. His calm had never been fear. His silence had never been surrender. It was the discipline of a man who knew that when false authority speaks long enough, it eventually signs its own confession. The private elevator doors opened at the far side of the lobby, but the people stepping out did not rush, did not interrupt, and did not announce themselves. That was the first sign that something larger than Victoria Langford's authority was already in motion. Lena Ortiz entered with a slim black tablet against her chest, followed by a corporate legal counsel named Priya Shah and two quiet members of the internal audit team who wore no badges, no dramatic expressions, and no confusion about what they were seeing. They did not walk directly to Victoria. They did not rescue Nathaniel with a title. They moved to the side of the lobby where they could observe without changing the record too soon. Lena's eyes found Nathaniel for half a second, and he gave no visible greeting. To anyone watching, they looked like corporate guests or senior staff responding to a service concern. To Nathaniel, their presence meant the evidence chain was now secure. Victoria saw them only as another audience she could impress, and that blindness became her next mistake. She straightened her jacket, lifted her chin, and returned to the front desk terminal as if paperwork could turn her prejudice into procedure. Caleb, note the time, she said. Caleb looked at the clock above the concierge station. 9:47 in the morning. Guest continues to refuse departure after denial of service. Nathaniel looked at the terminal. Please note that I am standing where security instructed me to stand. Russell, the older security guard, said quietly, that is accurate. Victoria ignored him and typed. Every keystroke appeared in the property management system, and because Nathaniel's reservation carried an active audit tag, every version of that incident report was being mirrored in real time to the secure corporate file. Victoria did not know that deleting a line would not remove it. Editing a phrase would not hide it. The first draft, the second draft, the pauses between words, even the timestamps showing when she changed guest refused verification to guest became disruptive were all being saved by a system built for exactly this kind of moment. Upstairs, one of Lena's analysts had already frozen the reservation log at the moment Maya first confirmed the booking. Another analyst pulled the payment authorization from the processor, approved, prepaid, no fraud flag, no chargeback history, no mismatch. A third analyst opened the service audio folder, where the front desk microphone had separated voices cleanly enough to show Nathaniel's tone remained even while Victoria's accusations changed shape. Lena tapped her tablet once and marked the file, refusal reason shifted from verification to atmosphere to staff discomfort to suspected fraud to non-compliance. Pattern documented. Down in the lobby, Daniel Reed, the consultant seated in the lounge, kept his phone steady behind a ceramic coffee cup. He was not trying to become part of the scene. He was a guest who had checked in the night before, a man who spent too much time in airports and hotels to ignore when a manager's voice turned a person into a problem. His video had captured Victoria pointing toward the doors, Maya contradicting the fraud implication, Russell asking for a safety reason, and Nathaniel standing with one hand on his suitcase, speaking calmly enough that the phone microphone caught every word. Beside the fireplace, a woman named Grace Holloway had also begun recording after hearing the phrase "guests like you." She had not intended to get involved. She was in Atlanta for a medical conference, waiting for a rideshare, but she knew the sound of polished unfairness when she heard it. Her video showed the lobby from a different angle, Victoria at the terminal, Nathaniel centered beneath the chandelier, security holding back, guests watching in silence. 2 independent civilian witnesses, 2 angles, both time-stamped. Victoria had no idea she was no longer arguing against one guest. She was arguing against a record growing wider by the second. Maya, still behind the counter despite being ordered away, quietly moved her hand to the small internal messaging window on her screen. She did not type much. She did not dare. She wrote only one line to the audit support channel that had appeared because of the tagged reservation valid. Manager blocking check-in. Staff threatened for confirming. Her finger trembled before she pressed send. The message disappeared from her screen, but not from the system. It arrived on Lena's tablet, attached automatically to Maya's employee ID, terminal location, and exact timestamp. Lena read it and forwarded it to Priya Shah with one note: staff retaliation exposure. Priya's expression did not change, but she began documenting in a legal preservation file. It included the live incident report, guest reservation, staff message, security call recording, lobby audio, elevator camera, and trance camera, and 2 prior complaints that had used nearly identical language. One complaint came from a black couple from Birmingham who had been asked to provide additional verification despite a prepaid anniversary suite. Another came from a traveling nurse from Macon who said Victoria told her the property might not be a good fit after she arrived in scrubs with a duffel bag. Both complaints had been closed by local management as misunderstandings. Both were now reopened under the same manager's name. Caleb saw Maya send the message and quietly did something he should have done months earlier. He opened the staff communication archive on his tablet and searched Victoria's name with the words atmosphere, profile, security, and standards. The results made his stomach tighten. There were old messages from supervisors warning staff to watch certain guests who did not match the lobby image. There were notes from Victoria asking why housekeeping relatives were using the main entrance. There was a staff thread from 3 weeks earlier where Maya had written, "We should not be asking some guests for extra verification when payment is already cleared," and Victoria had replied, "Front desk staff are not paid to debate brand judgment." Caleb did not send the archive to the general team. He sent it directly to the anonymous ethics portal, attaching himself as witness. His hands shook when he did it. Fear had kept him silent for 18 months, but the sight of Nathaniel standing calmly under public humiliation made Caleb understand that silence had not protected anyone. It had only made Victoria more fluent. At the security desk near the entrance, Russell used his radio in a low voice. Front lobby response, no safety issue observed. Guest comm. Manager requesting removal over reservation dispute. Holding position pending supervisor. That radio transmission was recorded on the hotel security channel and mirrored into the incident timeline. The younger guard beside him looked relieved, then added, "Second guard confirms no safety issue." It was a small statement, but it mattered. It closed the door Victoria would later try to open, the door marked threat. Nathaniel heard the radio, but he did not look away from Victoria. He had learned that the person building a false story often waits for the target to react to every detail. He gave her nothing extra to use. His calm was not weakness. It was protection for the truth. Victoria continued typing. Guest attempted to influence staff against management, she said aloud. Maya answered, I made my own statement. You are suspended, Victoria snapped. Your access will be reviewed. Priya Shah's pen moved across her legal pad. Retaliation statement in open lobby. Lena saved the audio clip. Caleb looked up. Victoria, you cannot threaten her. For confirming the system. I can manage my staff, Victoria said. And if you continue, I will review your conduct as well. Priya wrote again. Second retaliation threat. Nathaniel's eyes moved briefly to Priya, then back to Victoria. Still no reveal. Still no rescue. Only the record closing in. The front desk printer hummed suddenly, releasing the first copy of Victoria's incident report. She pulled it from the tray with the confidence of someone who believed paper gave power to whatever was printed on it. Mr. Brooks, she said, this is your final notice. You are being asked to vacate the property due to failure to meet verification requirements, refusal to comply with management, and disruption of guest experience. Nathaniel looked at the paper but did not take it. Does that report mention that the reservation is confirmed? It mentions the relevant facts. Does it mention that payment was authorized? It mentions verification concerns. Does it mention that your clerk told you the room was ready? Victoria's jaw tightened. Staff opinions are internal. Does it mention that security found no safety issue? Russell looked at her. She did not answer. Nathaniel nodded slowly. Then the report is not a record. It is a cover story. The words were calm, but they struck harder than shouting because every witness in the lobby had already seen enough to know they were true. Daniel's phone captured the paper in Victoria's hand. Grace Holloway's video captured Maya wiping a tear she refused to let fall. The lobby camera captured Victoria's face tightening with anger. The desk audio captured her next mistake. You people always think if you sound educated, the rules stop applying to you. The silence after that sentence was deeper than the one before. Even Victoria seemed to hear how far she had gone, but her pride moved faster than her judgment. She folded the report and pushed it across the counter. Leave. Lena froze the audio clip and tagged it, discriminatory language, direct. Priya sent one message to Thomas Grant, the regional vice president, who was still just outside the lobby with a senior human resources officer, threshold exceeded. Prepare. Intervention after final removal attempt. Thomas read it, looked through the glass partition toward Nathaniel, and nodded once. He had known Nathaniel for 11 years. He had seen him negotiate acquisitions without raising his voice. He had seen him fire executives with sadness instead of ego. He had also seen him become very still when a room revealed a moral failure. That stillness was now in the center of the lobby, holding an old suitcase that once belonged to Evelyn Brooks. Victoria, unaware that regional leadership was 10 yards away, signaled to the additional guards. Take his suitcase to the door. Russell stepped in front of the younger guards, not touching anyone, just placing himself between a bad order and its execution. No one touches guest property without a lawful reason. Victoria's face reddened. I am the lawful reason. Nathaniel looked at her, and for the first time his voice carried a quiet edge. No, Ms. Langford. You are the documented reason. The sentence unsettled her because it sounded less like a defense and more like a conclusion. She stared at him, then at the cameras, then at the legal-looking people near the side of the lobby. Something in her began to sense that the room was not shaped the way she thought it was. But instead of stepping back, she reached for the final tool of false authority, a signature. She placed the incident report flat on the counter, took a pen, and signed her name under the accusation that Nathaniel Brooks had refused verification, disrupted guests, and required removal from the property. The camera above the desk captured the pen crossing the page. The reservation log beside it showed valid. The audio file beside it held her words. Maya's message showed the truth. Russell's radio confirmed no safety issue. Caleb's archive showed a pattern. Daniel and Grace had independent video. Prior complaints were reopened. Legal preservation was active. Corporate leadership was present. Victoria did not realize it, but when she signed that report, she stopped creating an excuse and created evidence against herself. Nathaniel looked at the signature, then lifted his eyes to hers. He did not smile. He did not celebrate. He only said, "Thank you for putting it in writing." Victoria frowned as if he had misunderstood his own defeat. "That paper is why you are leaving." Nathaniel's gaze moved past her toward the private elevator corridor, where Thomas Grant had begun walking forward with Lena and Priya at his side. "No," Nathaniel said quietly. "That paper is why you are finished lying." Victoria Langford heard Nathaniel Brooks say the paper was why she was finished lying, and for the first time that morning, fear touched the edge of her confidence. It did not make her wiser. It made her crueler. Her eyes moved past him toward the private elevator corridor, where three corporate-looking figures were now crossing the marble with quiet purpose, but she still did not understand who they were there for. She thought they were responding to her call. She thought the machine she had used for years was arriving to protect her. So she straightened her shoulders, lifted the signed incident report, and turned the entire lobby into her final performance. "Good," she said sharply. "Corporate is here. Now everyone can see how a professional property handles a disruptive guest." Nathaniel did not answer. He stood with his old suitcase beside him, his face composed, his posture steady, his eyes carrying the weight of a man who had given her too many chances already. Maya Jenkins looked from Nathaniel to the approaching group, confused by the strange calm on Lena Ortiz's face. Caleb Price looked down at the report in Victoria's hand and knew, with a sick feeling, that she had just signed something that could not be explained away. Russell, the security guard, kept his hands visible and his body between Nathaniel's luggage and the younger guards, refusing to let a bad order become a physical scene. Victoria saw Russell standing there and snapped, "Move the suitcase." Russell did not move. "No, ma'am." The answer was quiet, but it cracked through the lobby harder than a shout. Victoria stared at him. "You are refusing a direct instruction." "I am refusing to touch a guest's property without a valid reason." "I gave you the reason. You gave me a report. I do not believe it matches what happened." The lobby went completely still. In Victoria's world, employees were supposed to whisper doubts in break rooms and obey in public. Russell had broken that order. She turned toward the younger guards. "Both of you. Take the suitcase to the sidewalk." One of them looked at Russell, then at Nathaniel, then at the signed report in Victoria's hand. "Ma'am, he is not threatening anyone." Victoria's face sharpened with humiliation. "This is not a debate." Nathaniel spoke softly. "It should never have been one." She rounded on him. "You are done speaking." "No," Nathaniel said. "I am done warning you." That sentence should have stopped her. It carried no anger, no threat, no volume, only a finality that made even guests near the fireplace hold their breath. But Victoria had spent too many years treating restraint as weakness. She mistook his warning for another line she could twist into misconduct. "Did everyone hear that?" she said, lifting the report. "That is intimidation." Maya stepped forward from behind the counter. "It was not." "Maya, leave the desk." No, it was a small word, but it stood taller than Maya herself. Her hands trembled, yet she did not retreat. "You are writing things that did not happen. I cannot be part of that." Victoria's eyes went cold. "Then you are terminated effective immediately." Caleb's head snapped up. "Victoria, you cannot fire her in the lobby." "I can fire an employee who refuses management direction." Nathaniel's jaw tightened slightly, the smallest visible change in him all morning. Not when Victoria insulted him. Not when she questioned his booking. Not when she called security. But when she tried to destroy a young employee's livelihood for telling the truth. "Ms. Langford," he said, "do not retaliate against her again." Victoria laughed, but the sound was thin now. "You do not give orders here. I am giving you a final chance to stop creating harm." "Harm?" she repeated, turning toward the guests like she wanted them to enjoy the absurdity. "A manager enforcing standards is harm now?" Daniel Reed's phone remained steady. Grace Holloway's video captured Victoria holding the report like a badge. The lobby cameras saw Maya standing pale but upright, Caleb beside her, Russell blocking the suitcase, Nathaniel centered beneath the chandelier, and the corporate team approaching from behind Victoria with every step. Victoria did not turn around. She was too busy proving she owned the room. "Let me make this clear," she said, pointing toward Nathaniel's old suitcase. "That bag leaves this hotel, and so do you. If you refuse, I will have you listed as trespassing." Priya Shah, the legal counsel, stopped walking for half a second, then began typing into her phone. Lena Ortiz's eyes hardened. Thomas Grant's expression changed from concern to decision. Nathaniel, still not revealing himself, looked directly at Victoria. "Trespassing?" "Yes." "For standing in a lobby with a valid reservation?" "For refusing to leave after service has been denied." "Service denied for a reason you have changed repeatedly." "Denied at management discretion." "And if law enforcement asks for the basis?" Victoria smiled with the confidence of someone who had used official language to make lies sound clean. "I will provide the incident report." Nathaniel looked at the paper. "The false one. The official one. Those are not the same thing." Victoria stepped closer, close enough that the front desk camera caught both of their faces in the same frame. "Listen carefully. You came into my hotel. You challenged my authority. You influenced my staff. You disrupted my lobby. Now you are going to walk out through those doors, or I will make sure your name is attached to a record that follows you." The threat landed in the room like a stain. It was not only about the reservation anymore. It was about reputation, dignity, and the kind of paper trail that can make an innocent person look guilty when power decides to write first. Nathaniel held her gaze. "You are threatening my name." "I am documenting your conduct." "No. You are threatening my name because I would not accept a lie. I am protecting this property." "From whom?" She looked him up and down one last time, not even trying to hide the judgment now. "From people who think a confirmation number buys them respect." Maya's eyes filled again. Caleb whispered. "Victoria, stop." Russell said, "Ma'am, that is enough." Even Mr. Whitcomb, the wealthy guest she had greeted minutes earlier, stepped forward. "Manager, you should stop talking." Victoria ignored all of them. Her pride had become a locked door from the inside. She turned to the additional guards. "If my own security team will not do its job, I will call Atlanta police and report a non-compliant individual refusing to leave private property." Russell's voice sharpened. "There is no safety issue. I am not asking you." She picked up the desk phone and dialed an outside line. The sound of each button seemed too loud. Nathaniel watched her with sadness now, not fear. "Do not make a false police report." Victoria held the receiver to her ear and smiled at him. "There it is again. You telling me what I cannot do. I am telling you the line you are about to cross. You should have thought about lines before walking in here like you owned the place." The sentence passed through the lobby, and somewhere behind her, Lena Ortiz closed her eyes for one brief second. Not because she was shocked. Because the irony had become unbearable. Nathaniel did not correct Victoria. Not yet. He let the words hang there, clean and complete. On the other end of the phone, a dispatcher answered. Victoria's voice changed instantly into calm professionalism. "This is Victoria Langford, General Manager at the Sterling Crown Atlanta. I need officers for a guest refusing to leave the property. He has been disruptive, refused verification, influenced staff, and we have concerns about possible fraudulent booking activity. Priya typed faster. Lena saved the call recording through the hotel phone system. The reservation log remained open and valid. Russell's radio transmission contradicted the safety claim. Maya's note contradicted the verification claim. Caleb's archive contradicted the idea that this was unusual. Daniel and Grace recorded the lie as it was spoken. Nathaniel stood still, because any movement now would become something Victoria could feed into the story. His calm was not weakness. It was the last protection left before the truth arrived with names attached. Victoria listened to the dispatcher, then said, "Yes, he is still here. African-American male, approximately 50s, charcoal coat, carrying a brown suitcase. No, he has not left despite repeated requests. Yes, I want him removed." The description was accurate in the shallow way lies often are. Correct details wrapped around false meaning. Nathaniel heard the whole thing and remembered his mother in that motel office, accused because a manager spoke first and truth arrived later. His fingers tightened once around the suitcase handle, then relaxed. He would not let anger drive. Not now. Victoria hung up and looked victorious. Police are on the way. The lobby reaction was not what she expected. No one relaxed. No one nodded. No one looked safer. Maya looked horrified. Caleb looked ashamed. Russell looked furious but controlled. Daniel lowered his phone just long enough to say, "I recorded that call." Victoria pointed at him. "Delete it." "No, this is private property." "Then ask the owner." The word struck the room strangely, because several people glanced toward Nathaniel without knowing why. Victoria scoffed. "The owner is not standing in this lobby taking orders from random guests." Nathaniel looked at her. "No. He is standing here watching a manager call the police on a valid guest." Victoria's face twisted with impatience. "You are not the owner." He said nothing. That silence annoyed her more than denial would have. She turned away and took the printed report from the counter again. "Maya, since you have chosen to make yourself part of this, I am adding staff interference to the report." Maya's voice shook. "I told the truth. You ignored management. Because management was wrong." The sentence made several guests murmur. Caleb placed his tablet on the counter. "I am submitting a witness statement." Victoria laughed in disbelief. "You?" "Yes." He swallowed, then continued. The guest provided identification. The reservation was valid. The payment was authorized. The guest remained calm. The escalation came from management. Victoria stared at him as if his spine had appeared without permission. "You are done here too." "Maybe," Caleb said quietly. "But I am done lying by." Silence. Upstairs, in the audit file, his ethics portal submission arrived with staff chat attachments. Lena marked it as corroborating witness. Thomas Grant was now only a few steps behind Victoria, but Nathaniel lifted one hand slightly, not to stop him completely, only to hold the moment until the final act finished. Thomas understood. Nathaniel wanted the line visible. Not implied. Not softened. Visible. Victoria reached for the final page of the incident report and added a handwritten note beneath her signature. Guest refused lawful request to leave and required police response. She pressed hard enough that the pen nearly tore the paper. Then she turned the report toward Nathaniel as if showing him the door through language. "There. That is the official record." Nathaniel looked at it. The cameras looked at it. Corporate legal looked at it. Staff looked at it. Guests looked at it. The false record sat on the counter beside the valid reservation, and nothing in the lobby could have made the moral failure clearer. "You were warned," Nathaniel said. Victoria leaned in. No, Mr. Brooks. You were. Then she picked up a hotel stamp from the desk, pressed it into the ink pad, and stamped the report with the property seal. The sound was small, but it landed like a judge's gavel in the wrong hands. Official. Final. False. Maya flinched. Caleb closed his eyes briefly. Russell shook his head once. Nathaniel looked at the seal, then at the small camera above it. That stamp was the moment she could not walk back. Insult could be excused by arrogance. Delay could be blamed on confusion. Even denial might be buried under vague discretion. But a knowingly false report, a staff retaliation threat, a call to police, and a property seal placed on a lie created a record no apology could erase. Victoria had not merely mistreated a guest. She had tried to use the institution to punish him for questioning her. She turned away from Nathaniel and finally noticed Thomas Grant, Lena Ortiz, and Priya Shah standing behind her. For the first time, the lobby saw her confidence flicker. Thomas, she said, forcing a smile. Good. I was just handling a serious guest issue. Thomas did not smile back. Lena's tablet was open, showing 4 camera angles, the reservation status, the security call log, and the incident report timeline. Priya held the legal preservation notice already prepared. Nathaniel remained silent. Victoria looked from Thomas to Lena, then to the tablet, then to Nathaniel. Some part of her began to understand that the people she thought had arrived to support her had been watching her. Still, pride made her try one last time. She lifted the stamped report and said, "As you can see, he has been removed from service for cause." Thomas Grant looked at the report, then at Nathaniel's old suitcase, then at the valid reservation still glowing on the screen behind Maya. His voice was quiet enough that the whole lobby leaned in to hear it. "Victoria, before anyone says another word, step away from the terminal." She blinked. "Excuse me." Lena Ortiz spoke next, calm and precise. "Do not edit, delete, print, move, or modify any file related to Mr. Brooks's reservation." Victoria's face drained slightly. "Mr. Brooks?" Nathaniel finally picked up his suitcase handle, not to leave, but to stand fully upright with the dignity she had tried to push out into the rain. He looked at Victoria, and his voice remained as controlled as it had been from the beginning. "I told you not to file a false report." The police had not arrived yet. The public reveal had not happened yet. But the point of no return had passed. Victoria Langford had threatened employees, lied to security, called law enforcement on a calm guest with a valid reservation, and stamped the lie with the hotel's own seal. The lobby no longer needed to wonder whether she had gone too far. Everyone had watched her cross the line, sign her name on the other side, and smile while doing it. For one long second after Lena Ortiz said the name Mr. Brooks, Victoria Langford looked as if the lobby had spoken in a language she did not understand. She held the stamped incident report in one hand, the paper still warm from the printer, the hotel seal pressed into the corner like proof of her authority. Behind her, Maya Jenkins stood frozen at the front desk. Caleb Price kept both hands flat on his tablet. Russell remained near the suitcase, and every guest in the lobby seemed to stop breathing at once. Thomas Grant, the regional vice president, did not raise his voice. He did not need to. The quiet in the room had become heavier than shouting. "Victoria," he said, "step away from the terminal." She forced a laugh, thin and uncertain. "Thomas, I think there has been some confusion. I was handling a removal. This guest has been disruptive for nearly 20 minutes, and I have already contacted police." Thomas looked at the signed report, then at Nathaniel Brooks, then back at Victoria. "I am aware you contacted police." She nodded quickly, grabbing at that as if it helped her. "Good. Then you understand the situation." Priya Shah, the legal counsel, moved beside Thomas with a calmness that made Victoria more nervous than anger would have. "We understand the situation very clearly. That is why all related files are now under legal preservation. Victoria blinked. Legal preservation. Lena lifted her tablet. On the screen were 4 camera angles from the lobby, the front desk audio file, the reservation log, the security radio transcript, Maya's internal message, and Victoria's incident report history arranged in a timeline. Victoria stared at the tablet, and for the first time, she did not look like a manager controlling a lobby. She looked like someone seeing the room from outside her own story. "Why are you recording this?" she asked. Lena answered evenly. "We are not starting now. The audit has been active since before Mr. Brooks arrived." The name struck harder the second time. Mr. Brooks. Not the guest. Not the individual. Not the problem. Mr. Brooks. Victoria turned slowly toward Nathaniel, who stood beneath the chandelier with his old suitcase at his side, calm as he had been from the first word. He did not smile. He did not rescue her from the silence. He only looked back at her with the same steady eyes she had mistaken for weakness. "What audit?" Victoria asked, though her voice had lost its edge. Thomas took one step forward. "The ownership audit." The lobby changed. Not loudly. No one gasped in a theatrical way. It was subtler than that. Guests straightened. Staff exchanged glances. Caleb's eyes widened. Maya brought one hand to her mouth. Russell looked at Nathaniel, then at the suitcase, then back at Nathaniel with dawning understanding. Victoria tried to recover before the truth finished arriving. "Ownership audit?" "I was not informed that ownership was on site." "That was the point," Lena said. Victoria looked offended, as if the lack of warning were the real misconduct. "Managers should be notified when senior leadership is inspecting a property." Nathaniel finally spoke. His voice was quiet, measured, and impossible to ignore. "Only if leadership wants a performance instead of the truth." Victoria's face tightened. "You are with ownership?" Thomas did not let Nathaniel answer first. He wanted the record clear, official, and witnessed. Nathaniel Brooks is the founder and majority owner of Brooks Sterling Hospitality Group. The words moved through the lobby like the chandelier lights had suddenly turned white. The old suitcase no longer looked like proof that he did not belong. It looked like a test the lobby had failed. Victoria's lips parted, but nothing came out. Her eyes moved to the confirmation screen, then to Thomas, then to Lena's tablet, then back to Nathaniel. "That is not possible," she said. It was not a denial. It was a wish. Lena tapped the tablet and opened the internal ownership profile. Nathaniel's photograph appeared beside corporate registration documents, executive credentials, property holdings, and the Atlanta flagship ownership line. Beneath it were the words founder, chairman, majority owner. Victoria stared at the screen as if it had betrayed her personally. "The reservation was under a standard guest profile," she said weakly. "Yes," Nathaniel said. "Because a standard guest profile should have been enough." That sentence settled over the front desk like a verdict. Maya's eyes filled again, but this time not from fear. Caleb closed his eyes, shame and relief crossing his face together. Russell exhaled slowly. Daniel Reed lowered his phone just a little, as if the moment deserved to be seen directly. Victoria looked around, searching for someone who still saw her as the authority. No one did. The power had not exploded away from her. It had drained quietly, camera by camera, truth by truth, until the badge on her suit was just a name tag attached to a person who had lost the room. "Mr. Brooks," she said suddenly, changing her voice into something softer and polished. "I apologize if there was any misunderstanding." Nathaniel looked at the stamped report in her hand. "Was there a misunderstanding?" She swallowed. "The information available to me was incomplete." Maya spoke before fear could stop her. The reservation was complete. The lobby heard it. Victoria's eyes flashed toward Maya, then immediately softened when she remembered who was watching. Thomas noticed. Priya noticed. Lena saved that moment too. Nathaniel did not move. Ms. Langford, you had the reservation. You had my identification. You had payment authorization. You had staff confirmation. You had security telling you there was no safety issue. You had several chances to correct yourself. Victoria's voice thinned. I was protecting the property. Lena turned the tablet toward the lobby screen mounted near the concierge desk. With one command, the hotel's internal display changed from a quiet promotional loop of spa packages and skyline views to a secure audit review screen. She did not show private guest details. She showed only the service interaction timeline, blurred where appropriate, but clear enough for every person present to understand. First, Maya confirming the reservation. Then Victoria refusing to expand the audit code. Then Victoria questioning Nathaniel's purpose. Then her voice saying the property had standards. Then the security call. Then the false incident report drafts appearing beside the actual reservation status. Then the line where she wrote refused verification while the screen showed identification accepted and payment approved. Then the moment she threatened Maya. Then the outside call requesting police based on a possible fraudulent booking. The lobby watched the truth assemble itself without needing Nathaniel to argue. Victoria's face changed with each clip. At first she looked offended. Then tense. Then pale. By the time her own voice filled the speakers saying, I decide who belongs in this hotel, she looked at the floor. It was the first time all morning she had nothing to add. Nathaniel turned slightly toward the screen, not with satisfaction, but with sadness. Those cameras were not installed to catch guests doing wrong, he said. They were installed because guests and employees kept telling us something was wrong here, and local reports kept making it disappear. Victoria looked up sharply. You were investigating me? Thomas answered. We were investigating patterns at this property. Priya added, and today you created a complete record. Victoria looked toward Caleb. Caleb did not look away this time. I submitted the staff archive, he said quietly. The messages about guest profiles. The notes about atmosphere. The complaints that were closed without review. Victoria's mouth opened, but Caleb continued before she could speak over him again. I should have done it sooner. Maya looked at him, surprised, then relieved. Lena tapped another file. We also have prior guest complaints reopened for comparison, including cases where prepaid guests were subjected to additional verification without documented cause. Victoria's hands tightened around the incident report, bending the paper slightly. Nathaniel's eyes moved to it. Do not alter that document. She looked down, realizing she was still holding the very paper that proved how far she had gone. Priya stepped forward and extended a hand. I will take the original incident report now. Victoria hesitated. For years, paper had been her weapon. Handing it over felt like surrendering the last piece of control she had. But Thomas's voice left no space for refusal. Victoria. Slowly, she gave Priya the report. Priya placed it inside a clear folder, sealed it, and wrote the time across the label. The small action felt more final than any speech. Thomas turned to Russell. Has any safety concern been observed regarding Mr. Brooks? Russell stood straighter. No, sir. He has been calm the entire time. Thomas looked at Maya. Was the reservation valid when Mr. Brooks arrived? Maya's voice shook, but it was clear. Yes, sir. Valid. Prepaid, and room ready. Thomas looked at Caleb. Did management override that without documented policy cause? Caleb swallowed. Yes, sir. Victoria whispered, this is not fair. Nathaniel's face did not change. Fair would have been honoring the reservation before you knew my title. The sentence left no room for defense. Outside, through the glass doors, flashing blue lights appeared faintly in the rain as the police car Victoria had called turned into the hotel drive. The irony moved through the room before the officers even entered. Victoria looked toward the doors with panic now, not confidence. Thomas spoke to Priya. "Notify dispatch that the ownership team is on site, there is no safety issue, and the original caller's statements are under review." Priya nodded and made the call immediately. Victoria's voice became desperate. "Mr. Brooks, I did not know who you were." Nathaniel looked at her for a long moment. "That is the problem." She flinched as if the words had removed the last cover she could hide under. He continued, still calm. "If you needed to know I owned the chain before treating me with dignity, then you were never protecting this hotel. You were protecting your power." The lobby was silent again, but this silence was different. Earlier, silence had belonged to fear. Now it belonged to recognition. Maya stood a little taller behind the desk. Russell stepped back from the suitcase because it no longer needed guarding. Caleb lowered his tablet, no longer hiding behind it. Victoria looked at Nathaniel, the man she had tried to send into the rain, and finally understood that every word she had spoken had traveled upward into a system he built, every camera she ignored belonged to a company he owned, and every employee she threatened now had witnesses stronger than her report. Thomas Grant moved beside Nathaniel and addressed him with quiet respect. "Mr. Brooks, how would you like us to proceed?" That was the moment Victoria truly changed color. Not when she saw the footage. Not when she heard the title. But when the man she had ordered removed was asked how the hotel should move forward. Nathaniel looked around the lobby, at the guests, the staff, the cameras, the old suitcase, and the young clerk who had risked her job for a truth that should not have required courage. Then he looked back at Victoria. "First," he said, "protect the staff from retaliation. Second, preserve every file. Third, make sure the police know there is no threat here. And fourth, Ms. Langford is relieved from guest-facing authority immediately." Victoria's face went still. The power had changed hands completely, but Nathaniel had not raised his voice once. That was what made it final. He had not taken control by humiliating her back. He had simply let the truth enter the room until her authority had nowhere left to stand. The first consequence came before the police reached the front doors. Priya Shah stepped aside with her phone to clarify the call Victoria Langford had made, and within seconds the responding officers were told that the property owner was on site, no safety threat had been observed, and the original report was under internal legal review. When the officers entered the lobby, they did not walk toward Nathaniel Brooks as Victoria had imagined. They walked toward Thomas Grant and Priya, accepted a brief summary, looked at the valid reservation record, spoke quietly with Russell, and left without removing anyone. That alone seemed to take the last air from Victoria's chest. The official story she had tried to build outside the hotel had collapsed before it could become anyone else's burden. Nathaniel stood near the front desk with his old suitcase beside him while the lobby watched a different kind of power move, not loud, not cruel, not rushed, but exact. Thomas turned to Victoria and said, effective immediately, "You are relieved of guest-facing authority and placed on administrative suspension pending investigation." Victoria's mouth opened, but no polished sentence came out. "Thomas, I have run this property above target for 3 straight quarters. And today you denied service to the majority owner of the company while holding a valid reservation, threatened employees, created a false incident report and contacted police with statements contradicted by our own records." Lena Ortiz tapped her tablet and read from the preserved timeline without raising her voice. 9:32, reservation confirmed by front desk. 9:33, payment authorization verified. 9:34, managerial hold placed without documented cause. 9:36, guest requested corporate contact information. 9:37, request declined. 9:40, security called despite no safety issue. 9:47, incident file opened with statements not supported by audio or system logs. 9:51, staff retaliation threat captured. 9:55, possible fraud reported without system flag. 9:59, property seal placed on incident report after contradictory evidence existed. Each time stamp landed like a lock clicking shut. Victoria looked at the lobby screen, then at Thomas, then at Nathaniel. I was making a judgment call. Nathaniel's voice stayed calm. A judgment call does not become honest because a manager signs it. Thomas nodded to Priya, and Priya addressed Victoria with professional precision. Your office access, property management credentials, scheduling permissions, and incident report privileges are suspended now. Please surrender your manager key card, office keys, property phone, and name tag. That was the moment the punishment became visible. Victoria had embarrassed people in that lobby for years with small phrases, cold smiles, and quiet removals. Now the symbols of the authority she had abused were being collected in front of the same marble counter where she had tried to shame someone else. Her hand moved slowly to the silver name tag on her jacket. For a moment, she seemed unable to remove it. Then she unclipped it and placed it on the counter. The small piece of metal made almost no sound, but everyone heard it. She set down the office keys next, then the black key card that opened staff doors, manager elevators, and guest incident files. Priya placed each item into a labeled envelope. Thomas instructed the senior human resources officer to escort Victoria to her office only to collect personal belongings, with audit staff present and no access to company systems. You cannot do this in front of guests, Victoria whispered. Nathaniel looked at her, and there was no triumph in his face. You chose the lobby. The sentence did not need another word. Maya Jenkins stood behind the desk, still shaken, watching the manager who had tried to suspend and fire her now unable to open a single system without permission. Thomas turned to Maya. Ms. Jenkins, your employment is secure. Any disciplinary statement made against you during this incident is void pending review, and you are protected from retaliation. Maya nodded, but her voice caught before she could answer. Caleb Price looked down, ashamed of how long he had waited to stand beside her. Thomas looked at him next. Mr. Price, your witness statement has been received. You will be interviewed separately. Your failure to escalate prior concerns will also be reviewed, but your cooperation today is noted. Caleb accepted it with a quiet nod. He deserved review, and he knew it. Russell was thanked for refusing to touch guest property without a valid safety reason. His radio transmission was added to the evidence chain. Daniel Reed and Grace Holloway were asked if they would be willing to preserve their recordings and provide statements. Both agreed. The payoff did not come as a single dramatic blow. It came as a file built so carefully that Victoria could not step around it. Hidden lobby cameras showed Nathaniel's calm posture. Front desk audio captured Victoria's shifting reasons. The reservation log proved the booking was valid. Payment authorization proved there was no fraud flag. Maya's internal message proved staff knew the truth in real time. Russell's radio call proved security saw no threat. Caleb's staff archive showed a pattern of coded language around guest profile, atmosphere, and brand judgment. Daniel's and Grace's videos proved the public humiliation happened exactly as witnesses remembered. The stamped incident report proved Victoria had turned false statements into official hotel record. Priya sealed the original report, exported digital copies, and placed all files under litigation hold. Corporate legal notified Brooks Sterling headquarters that the Atlanta property was under emergency management review. Victoria was escorted from the lobby not through the main entrance, where she had tried to send Nathaniel into the rain, but through the staff corridor she had so often used to make problems disappear quietly. This time, nothing disappeared. By evening, Brooks Sterling Hospitality Group issued an internal notice to employees across the chain. It did not name Nathaniel as the guest, but it confirmed that a manager at the Atlanta flagship had been suspended after a service denial involving a valid reservation, false incident documentation, staff retaliation threats, and a security escalation unsupported by evidence. It ordered preservation of any prior complaints connected to the property and opened a confidential reporting channel for employees who had witnessed similar conduct. Within 24 hours, the channel filled. A bellman reported that Victoria had told staff to keep delivery drivers out of view of premium guests. A former front desk agent submitted messages about extra verification being applied selectively. A housekeeping supervisor described being warned not to let relatives wait in the main lobby after shifts. A guest from Birmingham resubmitted the anniversary complaint that local management had closed as misunderstanding. The traveling nurse from Macon sent her original email chain, showing how her concern had been softened until it looked like confusion instead of mistreatment. One by one, the old stories Victoria thought she had buried returned with dates, names, and receipts. 3 days later, after formal review by Human Resources, Legal, Corporate Audit, and Regional Leadership, Victoria Langford was terminated for cause. Her termination letter cited denial of service without policy basis, falsification of an incident report, misuse of security escalation, retaliatory threats toward employees, discriminatory service conduct, and failure to preserve guest dignity. Her access to Brooks Sterling Systems was permanently revoked. She was barred from future management roles at any Brooks Sterling property. The company referred the false police call and incident documentation for civil liability review, and affected guests were contacted through legal and guest relations. The purpose was not revenge for embarrassment. It was accountability for power misused in writing, on camera, and in front of people she believed would stay quiet. Nathaniel was formally cleared of every accusation Victoria had written. His reservation was restored in the system, not because he needed the room anymore, but because the record needed to show what should have happened the first time. The incident report was corrected with a signed addendum: guest provided valid identification, valid prepaid reservation, no safety issue observed, service denial unsupported, original report false. Nathaniel asked that Maya be the employee to check him in after the correction, if she felt comfortable. She did, though her hands trembled slightly when she printed the key card. He accepted it the way any guest should have been able to accept it, with a quiet thank you and no demand for special treatment. Then he turned to the staff still gathered near the desk and said, "This hotel does not become better because I was protected. It becomes better when the next person does not need to be powerful to be believed." Those words traveled farther through the company than the footage did. By the end of the week, every manager in the Brooks Sterling chain had received a mandatory directive: no guest could be denied a valid reservation under vague standards such as atmosphere, profile, or comfort without documented policy cause and supervisor review. Any call to security or law enforcement had to be tied to observable conduct, not appearance, tone, or assumption. Any staff member who contradicted a manager in good faith during a guest dignity concern was protected from retaliation. Hidden audit footage would be reviewed by corporate, not local management, whenever discrimination complaints arose. The Atlanta property was placed under temporary regional supervision, with Thomas Grant overseeing operations until a new general manager could be appointed. Maya Jenkins was offered paid leave for the remainder of the week, but she asked to stay on shift after a short break. When Nathaniel asked why, she said, "Because guests are still coming in." He understood. That was hospitality at its purest. Not performance. Responsibility. Caleb accepted a formal corrective review for failing to escalate earlier, and he gave full testimony about the culture of fear Victoria had created. Russell received a written commendation for refusing to move guest property without cause. Daniel and Grace submitted their videos, not for attention, but because truth needed witnesses beyond the company's own cameras. Victoria lost the floor, the office, the keys, the title, and the ability to write another false story inside that hotel. Nathaniel regained more than a room. He reclaimed the promise his company had been built on. The marble lobby that tried to turn him into a problem now had to display the truth in its own records: he had been calm, he had been lawful, he had been right, and the person who abused authority had finally been held to the standard she pretended to protect. The story did not end when Victoria Langford lost her name tag. Nathaniel Brooks made sure of that. A single firing could satisfy anger, but it could not repair a culture that had taught employees to whisper truth only after damage was done. 3 days after Victoria's termination became final, Brooks Sterling Hospitality Group opened a full dignity review of the Sterling Crown Atlanta, and for the first time in years, people who had been quietly carrying humiliation were invited to speak without begging to be believed. The first listening session took place in a conference room on the second floor, the same room Victoria once used for revenue briefings and staff warnings. This time, the chairs were arranged in a circle. No one sat at the head of the table. Maya Jenkins sat near the window with a notepad in her lap, still nervous, but no longer afraid to look up. Caleb Price sat across from her, ready to answer for his silence. Russell stood near the door, not as security, but as witness. Thomas Grant, Priya Shah, Lena Ortiz, and a human resources team listened while former guests joined by video call. The black couple from Birmingham spoke first. They had saved for months to celebrate their anniversary at the Sterling Crown, only to be questioned at the counter as if a prepaid suite were suspicious in their hands. The traveling nurse from Macon said she had arrived after a 12-hour shift, still in scrubs, and was told by Victoria that another property might better match her needs. A young delivery driver explained that he had been ordered through the service hallway while white vendors used the front entrance without question. A former front desk agent admitted she had learned to recognize Victoria's coded phrases: guest profile, lobby image, atmosphere concern, brand fit. Each phrase sounded harmless on paper, but everyone in that room now understood what it had meant in practice. Nathaniel did not interrupt them with apologies designed to protect the company. He listened. When he finally spoke, he did not talk about public relations, revenue, or reputation. He said, "A complaint is not a threat to the brand. A complaint is a guest telling us where the brand failed." That sentence became the first line in the new training binder. Within 2 weeks, the Sterling Crown Atlanta changed more than its manager. The old guest removal policy was rewritten from the ground up. No manager could deny a valid reservation under vague terms like comfort, atmosphere, attitude, or profile. Any denial had to be tied to clear policy, documented facts, and review by a second supervisor. Any call to security had to identify an observable behavior, not a feeling about a person. Any call to law enforcement had to be approved by a senior duty manager unless there was an immediate safety concern. Reservation disputes had to preserve the full screen log, audio, and staff notes before any incident report could be finalized. Most importantly, employees were given a protected truth rule: if a staff member corrected a manager during a guest dignity issue, that correction could not be punished without review by corporate human resources. Maya helped write that rule. At first, she did not think she had earned the authority. Nathaniel told her authority was not only given to people with titles, sometimes it was proven by the moment they chose truth over safety. She was promoted to guest dignity lead for the Atlanta property, not as a reward for being embarrassed in public, but because she had shown the exact courage the hotel needed to protect. Caleb was not promoted. He did not ask to be. He entered a corrective leadership program and stood in front of new supervisors during training to say the line that cost him the most to admit: silence is not neutral when you know the truth and your title makes someone else stand alone. Russell helped train the security team on service-based restraint. He taught younger guards that their job was not to make a manager feel powerful, but to keep people safe, protect property lawfully, and refuse orders that turned dignity into a problem. Lena expanded the dignity audit system across the entire Brooks Sterling chain, but Nathaniel insisted on strict limits. Cameras would not be used to monitor guests for status or appearance. They would be used to preserve truth when power was questioned. Audit files would be reviewed by corporate ethics, not by the local manager being accused. Anonymous employee reports would bypass property leadership completely. Prior complaints from all Brooks Sterling properties were reopened for pattern review, and several managers who had hidden behind similar language were retrained, disciplined, or removed. The changes did not stay inside the company. Hotel workers in Atlanta began talking about the Sterling review as a turning point. A local hospitality association invited Maya and Russell to speak about Dignity First service. The training video, with faces blurred and private details removed, became required viewing for new supervisors. It did not show Nathaniel's title first. It showed the valid reservation, the calm guest, the shifting excuses, the false report, and the staff who chose to tell the truth. That order mattered. Nathaniel wanted every trainee to understand that the guest should have been respected before anyone knew he had power. Guests noticed the difference too. A construction foreman checking in with dusty boots was greeted the same way as the attorney behind him. A grandmother arriving with grocery bags before visiting her sick sister was offered help without being questioned like she had taken a wrong turn. Housekeeping. Staff began using the main lobby elevators during approved times without being glared at by management. The marble did not change. The chandelier did not change. The people did. And that was the only renovation that mattered. Nathaniel refused interview requests and declined every headline that tried to turn the incident into a personal victory. He did not want applause for surviving disrespect inside a building he owned. He wanted a company where the next person would not need ownership papers, hidden cameras, or a room full of witnesses to receive basic respect. Victoria had lost her position, but the larger victory was that her methods lost their hiding place. The phrases she had used to cover bias were named. The reports she had used to rewrite people were challenged. The employees she had trained to fear her learned that truth could have structure behind it. The guests she had dismissed were called back, apologized to, and compensated. The hotel did not become perfect. No institution does in 1 week. But every policy, every training session, every reopened complaint, and every protected employee made it harder for cruelty to dress itself as standards again. 3 weeks later, Nathaniel Brooks returned to the Sterling Crown Atlanta without security beside him, without reporters outside, and without anyone at the door knowing whether he was there as owner, guest, or simply a man walking in from a warm Georgia afternoon. The rain from that morning was gone. Sunlight now poured through the tall glass entrance and stretched across the marble floor in quiet gold. His old brown suitcase rolled behind him again, the same scuffed corners, the same repaired latch, the same handle his mother had held years before in motel hallways where dignity had been demanded from people who were rarely given it freely. This time, the lobby did not tighten when he entered. The doorman smiled before looking at his clothes. The bellman greeted him without measuring the suitcase. At the front desk, Maya Jenkins looked up from helping a guest in a faded work shirt and dusty boots, a man who had just finished a long shift and wanted nothing more complicated than the room he had paid. 4. Welcome to the Sterling Crown, Maya said to him with the same warmth she would have given a senator, a celebrity, or a family stepping in from the airport. We are glad you are here. Nathaniel stopped just far enough away to hear it, and something in his chest eased. The words were simple. They should have always been simple. The guest handed over his identification, and Maya checked the reservation without suspicion, without extra questions, without making him prove he belonged to the room he had purchased. A young front desk trainee stood beside her, watching carefully. Maya did not lecture him. She simply modeled the standard. Respect first. Policy clearly. Dignity always. Caleb Price passed through the lobby carrying a training binder, no longer hiding behind a tablet, no longer pretending fear was professionalism. When he saw Nathaniel, he gave a small nod, not asking for forgiveness, only acknowledging the work still owed. Russell stood near the entrance, speaking with 2 younger security guards, his voice calm as he explained that safety was never supposed to be used as a costume for bias. Near the concierge desk, the lobby screen no longer showed only spa packages and skyline views. It rotated through service promises now: every guest enters with dignity, every employee may speak truth, every report must match the record. Nathaniel looked up at the small black dome camera above the chandelier. It was still there, quiet and watchful, but it did not feel like a threat. It felt like a reminder that truth needed witnesses when memory was not enough. Later that afternoon, Nathaniel walked alone into the restored manager's office behind the lobby. Victoria's sharp perfume was gone. Her framed revenue charts had been replaced by service commitments, employee protection policies, and a photograph Nathaniel had brought from home. In the picture, Evelyn Brooks stood outside that old roadside motel in her housekeeping uniform, tired hands folded, eyes proud, smile gentle but unbroken. Beneath the frame, Maya had placed a small brass plaque with words Nathaniel had not asked for but could not bring himself to remove: "Luxury begins where dignity is protected." He stood before the photograph for a long time. He thought about his mother leaving that motel office after being falsely accused, still straight-backed, still refusing to let someone else's lie become her name. He thought about all the guests who had walked into beautiful rooms and been made to feel ugly by someone with a title. He thought about how justice, when done right, was not a spotlight. It was a door left open for the next person. His phone buzzed with a message from Lena Ortiz: "Atlanta Dignity Review complete. First month under new policy shows 0 unsupported service denials. Staff reports up. Guest complaints being resolved faster." Nathaniel read the message, then looked again at his mother's photo. "We are getting closer," he said softly. He did not say it like victory. He said it like a promise. Before leaving, he returned to the lobby and saw the same guest in dusty boots walking toward the elevator with a key card in hand and a small relieved smile on his face. No one stared at him. No one questioned why he was there. No one made the chandelier feel too expensive for his footsteps. Nathaniel took the handle of the old suitcase and walked toward the glass doors as evening settled over Atlanta. Maya called after him, "Have a good evening, Mr. Brooks." He turned back, smiled, and said, "Make sure the next guest gets the same one." Outside, the city moved as usual, cars passing, rain clouds clearing, hotel lights beginning to glow against the dusk. Nathaniel paused beneath the canopy and looked once more at the lobby through the glass. Marble had not made it better. Cameras had not made it better. Ownership had not made it better by itself. People choosing truth had made it better. And as he stepped onto the sidewalk with his mother's suitcase rolling beside him, Nathaniel understood that dignity was not something a hotel gave to a guest. It was something every person carried in, and the only honorable job of power was to make sure no one at the door tried to take it away.